I see. You're trying. There we go. I still can't hear you, but I do see you. I think that other machine's doing a little bit of a loopy loop for you. So we'll see about getting that squared away.
Yeah,
There he is. So we got this one and that one and the other one, but now it stopped. Nice. Happy Thursday, everybody. Time for some talking shh.
She's taking control.
She came in from everywhere.
The video's not even in the restream. What? Okay, and you're fucking with me.
I see. You're trying. I love it. There we go.
Oh, I see why I'm getting
still
a loop from the... There we go.
The Loopa Loopa.
I did a looper and...
That's right. That kind of a day, right? You know, a little too early in the morning for us to be doing this, right? Just woke up and all that kind of thing. But that's okay. We got it worked out. Now, I'm also having some camera issues over here where I got one of my cameras, but not the other one, so you guys are down here now. So you got to look up at my chin from down there, because I don't have a good place to put that camera up there where it's supposed to be. Too bad.
And I'm situating between these machines. They're all a little pukey at the moment.
Little bit pukey. It's always nice. I'm going to go for a different lighting scheme over here. See about that, maybe. Blue? No. Blue's no good. That's a little better. We'll try that. Yeah, so definitely some interesting loopage going on there. But that's all right. Now, in the meantime, I know that we've been meaning to talk about guitar for the last couple times now, so we'll probably do some guitar talk today. We also have one on the vocal. We talked about last week, we were going to talk about vocal formants and how you make the sound of ee versus ah versus ooh with just even using a sine wave or using a synthesizer. You can get those sounds by using the appropriate spacing on boosting formants. We can look at a video for that as well.
Ah, cool.
And it also goes into the vocoder at the end, where it basically, you're learning how to do it at the beginning, and then at the end you're seeing how a vocoder automatically takes your voice and then reinterprets the synth signal as that. And that's how you get that action going.
Oh, you've been looking into some cool stuff.
Yeah. Some good stuff to check out. I see that we're cutting off the top of my head now. I just hope we don't cut off all the brain. That'd be no good. I need all of that. Just got to duck down lower. There. How about that?
You gotta make yourself shorter.
Gotta make myself short. I mean, this chair, I'm already at the bottom as low as this chair goes, so I can't get the chair any lower. So I'll just have to slouch instead of sitting up. We'll try that. I'm just not used to where the camera is either. Looking down over there. But I also know that you had a couple videos that you wanted to talk about, so we can intersperse whichever ones wherever. We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, if you've got something, let's start with that. And I'm trying to get this, what I've been playing with the last couple of days. Hopefully this machine cooperates. And
that would be best. Let me go ahead and make sure we get this one volume equalized here for us. We'll see if that's an appropriate volume for what we're doing. And we'll just share it by the tab here. And then... this is from a YouTube page from Sean Thomas Martin, and I have not seen him before, so this was something new that came up basically just from the whole, as I was exploring vocal stuff and formants and things like that, these started to come up, and he doesn't have a huge amount of followers, but somebody that I subscribed to immediately when I saw this, and the way that it's analyzing everything, it's definitely a good way to look at the EQ bands, and you can actually see the EQ bands most of the time that he's speaking, so you can see where his voice, where the strong points of the voice are in the deeper end as a male voice, and you'd see when you're talking consonants or you're talking s and t and sounds like that, those are just noise where they're much higher up. But yeah, it's an interesting watch here. So, Formants Explained and Demonstrated. Sean Thomas Martin is the YouTube channel, and it's about an 8.5-minute video. And we'll see what we got here. Let me know how the volume is.
I like the way the EQ
Other
looks.
concepts to grasp in acoustics. They're basically ranges of frequencies that are amplified by the shape of your vocal tract, the shape of your throat and mouth, that give your particular voice its distinct characteristics and also are responsible for vowel sounds. So in theory, a voice produces an infinite number of formants, but only 4 or 5 are really relevant to the way we hear things, because higher ones are just out of the range of human hearing. And the most important are the first 2 formants, the lowest 2. Those are the formants that are responsible for vowel sounds, and 3 and up are just responsible for the color of your particular voice. So before I really start talking about formants, let's just go over what you're seeing here in front of you. This is a graph of the sound spectrum, all the sound that you're hearing in this video, all the sound that's going through my computer is being displayed on this graph. Low frequencies over here and high frequencies over here. The louder a particular frequency is being played, the louder the spike, or the higher up the spike at that point will be. So you might be thinking, humans can only produce one pitch at a time when they speak or sing, right? So why am I seeing frequencies all over this graph? Well, any complex sound like a human voice or an instrument produces a bunch of what are called overtones. And I won't be getting into overtones too much for now, but suffice it to say that overtones are higher frequencies than a fundamental note that you're singing that go all throughout the sound spectrum. Your voice also produces some white noise, like your consonants, like S's and T's. S, t, t, t. There's no actual notes, but there's still sound. It's called noise. And just air passing through your vocal tract also produces some noise. So with that little explanation, let's get into what exactly formants are. I can show you where the formants in my voice are just from this graph here. So let's say, let's take the vowel e as an example. So so there's a spike in frequencies around a little less than 2,000 hertz, and another one between like around 600 or 700 hertz. And to show you that that is what is making vowel sound, let's take that note that I was singing, and I'm playing it on a synthesizer now, and I'm going to amplify the frequencies in those areas, and it will sound like the vowel sound that I was saying. So let's amplify at around 600, and we also said a little less than 2,000. Kind of sounds like the vowel e. We can do other vowels in this way, like if we move the second formant down near to the first, we get an ah, and we can move the first formant down and we get like an oo, and then that's kind of like I or E. So as you can see, vowel sounds are produced by 2 frequency bands that are amplified by your vocal tract. And I can show you different vowel sounds with my own voice too. And you see those 2 resonances are just moving around in the sound spectrum, and that's what's changing when you change vowel sounds. And basically, those are formants. That's what the concepts of formants is. And as I was saying earlier, the higher formants just give your voice its own particular color. We can add those into our synthesized voice as well. So let's make ah again, and we'll add 2 higher frequency formants, and it sounds like this. Just gives it a little more color in the high end. There's without and with. So different people are going to have different higher frequency formants, and that's why different people's voices sound different. So it's worth noting that your vocal tract will resonate in the same way no matter what note you're singing. That's why you can say a vowel, like let's say eh, and I'm going to change notes now. and it still sounds like eh because the formants haven't moved. So let's play ah on our synthesizer, and I'm going to change notes. It still sounds like ah because the formants are in the same place in the sound spectrum, even if the note that's being played is moving. And that means that you don't even have to be singing a note for formants to act and create vowel sounds. That's how whispering works. You can see the formants are around 1,000 when you say ah, and that works with whispering too. That's what whispering is. You pass noise through your vocal tract, and the formants in your voice filter it in the same way. So one other concept that's worth talking about is the concept of vocoding. Vocoding is when a computer looks at the formants in your voice, and instead of applying them to the sound produced by your larynx, it applies them to a synthesized sound. So we can take our synthesizer we've been playing with, and instead of manually adding resonances, we can tell the computer to monitor the formants in our voice, and the computer will add the resonances to the synthesizer. It'll basically put the formants, the defining characteristics of my voice and my vowel sounds, into a synthesizer. It'll use my voice to filter a synthesizer, and this is what that sounds like.
And I can play different notes too. I can play a melody if I want, if I can. It's also worth noting that if you shift your formants down, it sounds like you're a larger or taller individual, because when your vocal tract is longer,
all of your formants will be a little bit lower. So if you lower the formants, you sound like bigger or older, and if you raise the formants,
you sound smaller. Even if you're playing some low notes, if you play high notes, it's especially notable. And you can play high notes and lower the formants, and
it sounds like you're talking like this, because that's what you're actually doing when you change your mouth so that you talk like this. You're lowering the formants in your voice. So that is formants in a nutshell. The bands of frequencies that your mouth and throat resonate, amplify, to create vowel sounds and the sound of your particular voice. Hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm a fan of how the graph, like you were saying, the graph of the EQ is very cool. Seeing where everything falls in the spectrum, just watching it while he's talking, is very useful. Be able to see where in the spectrum everything is happening. That's very useful. Oh.
Yeah.
There you are.
And the fact that, like, EQing with vowels, that's good stuff to know.
Yeah. And just the, I had no idea that, that E sound would be, those peaks that far apart, relative to each other makes sense, but I never would have thought of it that way. I would have thought it was something completely different that shapes the sound to be either E or O or oo. But the fact that you can do it that easily is very cool. I see Vange. Vange. Hope it's not vengeance. It's all good. It's working. I like it. Now that was from, like we said, Sean Thomas Martin is the page for that one. The other one we're going to watch later on is something about the doing simple chord shapes and connecting little licks into the chord shape, so that you have something to basically put in with your rhythm playing when you're playing rhythm, so that when you play rhythm guitar, you're able to fill in with a little bit of a lick here and a lick there to make something a little more interesting than just hitting block chords or just arpeggiating or whatever. But we'll check that out a little bit later. Figured we'd go over some guitar stuff today.
Oh, Vange is frozen.
It's not that cold. You're the one who was frozen. What was it, last week? How cold did it get?
Negative 67 was the bottom. Hey, we're back to 0 though. So
Oh,
it's springtime.
heat wave. It's a heat wave. We got up to 50, I think, today. It was crazy. Crazy, 50. But yeah, back up to 0. I mean, you got to be happy about that. Because minus 67 is just, that's unnecessary, is what I would say. Unnecessarily cold.
I got nothing done for like 4 days, except for the fire.
Yeah, tend that fire, man. Tend the fire and then duck back under the blankets. It's about the plan during weather like that, I would say. At least that'd be my plan. Maybe make some like chili or something in the meantime, or something good, hearty that sticks to the bones. Warm you up. Soup, chili, that kind of thing. I'm a fan. Now, with some of the stuff that we were going to go over, has to do with the guitar charts that we looked at a couple times, where I was looking at a few different ones here. Let me get a few of those loaded back up over here again. They're good to have just for reference, being able to talk about certain positions, whether it's pentatonics or whether it's diatonics, or whether talking about how chords relate to pentatonics, relate to scale shapes. Being able to put those together is very important, because once you're comfortable with doing that, everything else just starts to become that much easier. Another one that's important is for exploration on a guitar, and just getting comfortable with even just playing things on one string. Doesn't matter which string, doesn't matter what you're playing, but just play a note somewhere and then see where it takes you, up or down, and just try to like in the middle of a string somewhere, and then just try to go up some go down some. You'll feel a major thing, you'll feel a minor thing, you'll feel a pentatonic thing, just start working into and understanding how the notes all of the scale all relate to each other up and down one string. And then you can build in those scale shapes that you already know as well. But it just opens up another avenue of freedom where you can just work your way up one string. If you wanted to suddenly get higher on the neck from down here, you can just do and just kind of work your way right up. Yep, and then all of a sudden you're up there. Or if you're going to go really fast, do a little arpeggio. Just like that. And that's the thing is, it's to me, a lot easier to play faster on the keys. Again, not the weighted keys, but the unweighted keys. The fact that they bounce up and down so quickly, as you're able to go very quickly. On a guitar, it has a lot, it's mostly just your fretting hand, but if you're doing things where you're trying to pick and fret at the same time, it's the mechanics and the timing of that is what you really need to work on. And that's where people who play very fast has a lot to do with working that speed up over time and doing all those exercises, putting in the work of doing the scales and doing the scale positions and the fingerings to get yourself comfortable and be able to fluidly go in and out of one position to another is also important. Because too often people will get locked into one position. They learned how to play a major scale this way, and then anytime they're going to play something that's in a major key, they're in that position playing that scale, and that way you always end up with the same sounding riffs if you explore just that, just that spot, just that shape. So it's important to browse around some when you're doing things and try other things. Now let me see.
Now I'm in G.
Nice. G's good. Just a little of that. Up and down. Now, where is the chart I was looking for there? Some of them were the guitar fingerings. Most of them were the guitar fingering charts. Some of them were things like the circle of fifths. Just good to have handy. Like, to me, I have it essentially memorized at this point, but it's also depending on what you're trying to look at. Like if you're writing a song and you're playing in the key of D, let's say, so you're in D major, and no matter what the progression is that you're doing, if it's all just hanging out in D major and you're just trying to figure out what chords go with it, well, you got to know that the 1, the 4, and the 5 are what you're going to be using. So you're using the D, the G, and the A for all the major chords, and then for the minor chords, you're using the other 3 of the 7. We don't talk about the 7 because
he's an asshole.
He's an asshole. So we say no to the 7. In this case, the 7 would be that F sharp in the key of G, which is also the only black note in the entire progression. Everything else is all white notes the whole way up. As far as Meticulous is concerned, I'm playing in C major, so it considers that a wrong note, but I can fix that and just tell Meticulous to say, hey, we're playing in G now, instead of playing in C. There. That way, those notes all work now. So everybody's in there. As for the chords, there's your major 7. If you get that F sharp in there, you consider that E minor 7 over G, which is interesting. But that would be the G7, the dominant 7, using the F instead of the F sharp. And then the sus4, like to throw in that C from that G chord instead of the B. The C and the A would be the 4 and the 2, so you get that sus4, sus2. And you can use both of those, or you can just use one of them. You can bounce to it occasionally. You can use it as a, it's got that suspended sound so that you can go to somewhere where it's supposed to be major or supposed to be minor, or you can just drop in that suspended one where it's a bit ambiguous, kind of like a power chord or a 5 chord.
It's got that journey feel.
Yeah.
Like the one we were playing with last week.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, I like that. And that's where, again, it just gives you a little bit somewhere to rest, where you're not necessarily moving to another chord, or you're not necessarily staying on the same chord. You're doing something kind of in between, where, it gives you a good spot to hang out and do things.
I feel like I'm playing 3 chords, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All feel like kind of different.
Yeah. What I like most about it is the fact that the inner and outer note of that little chord you're doing there, the 1 and the 5, are staying the same. And then you're just kind of, that middle note goes from the 3 to the 4 to the 2, and it gets you comfortable with being kind of locked into a chord position and being able to play some melody in the middle of that chord position without having to, think too much about it, because your fingers are just right there, right? Like if you've got your 1 and your 5 are holding the outer sides of that chord, the 2, 3, and 4 are just kind of hanging out in the middle. So that middle one is the one you're supposed to hit, right? That's the major or minor chord that you're hitting. And then the other 2 are going to be the 4 and the 2 and can give you that little suspended feel. That's one of those great ones for surrounds, where if you wanted to end a phrase during a solo or whatever on the 3, for example, when you get there, you could encapsulate. You can go from wherever you were going, you go to the 4 to the 2 to the 3, or you go to the 2 to the 4 to the 3, because you're trying to get to the 3, but you're going around it.
Yeah.
So,
and if if you are moving the bass down, because I did the E and the C, depending on which one you're using, some of them go better with those notes. So like, with the root, yeah, the 4 works nice with the C.
Yeah.
Because it's got a C up on top.
Mm-hmm. The F sharp, you mean? Get the F sharp in there for the G.
Yeah, for the D.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or the A, the A
or the F sharp
works with the D.
Even the F sharp. Not that we would use it very often, but mostly this in the key of G. That's just like you were saying. The only thing we have to worry about is that F sharp. So it's all just the white notes, except for when you have the F sharp coming around. So that B gets it. D gets it, and the F sharp gets it.
Yep. Gotta love G major.
G major's a good one.
Yeah, it's as good as C.
Yeah, yeah. And where I was talking about before, D major, he's right next door. I mean, he's only one more sharp. You're only dealing with the F sharp and the C sharp.
And D major is my typical go-to.
Nice. It's a good one because then you get a nice little mix. You do have, a couple of the black notes involved, 2 out of the 5. It's making its way there. Nothing's too complicated though, because you're only dealing with that one in each area. They're separated by a little bit. The F sharp and the C sharp are all kind of in each spread around each area. They're separate a little bit. Yes, they are.
I got you looped again.
You loopa loopa loopa. That's all right. Because if one of me is good, then 2 of me is even better.
Shit, I wish I could get that machine to work. I got a virtual you.
That's true.
We're gonna look at that in the future.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna keep playing with it.
Definitely. I like what I hear. I like what I hear. Now, I do hear slight differences, slight variances in the accent and what have you, and it's probably, I wouldn't have to read the exact phrase necessarily that it's using, but we would have to feed it something where I'm more specifically trying to read for something like that, rather than just grabbing a snippet of conversation from wherever, because the snippet could be, I could be doing a whole lot of, ups and downs and whatever, things that I wouldn't normally do in regular speech. When we're just grabbing a snippet. But if I actually read something specific to it and then we build it from there, that might be better. So I'll do like a 2-minute read of something where I try, like a quick brown fox jumps over to a lazy dog, for a typing class, or make sure you get all the letters in there, make sure they all work. Do something like that. Read like a 2-minute thing that covers all the phonics and inflections and all the important ones, at least.
Yeah, and they give you a couple of. They don't give you a lot of tweaking settings. There's only really 2: stability and clarity and similarity. Those are the things that the quick brown fox jumped over. What did the fox jump over?
The lazy dog, but it's a quick brown fox. Otherwise, you don't get the A in there.
A brown fox.
And I think is it jumps over? A quick brown fox jumps over to get the S in there. A lazy dog. The
Let's
lazy
see
dog.
if I can do this without creating a loop. There we go.
A quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
The lazy.
The lazy dog.
That dog. Oh, I didn't spell lazy.
That dog has lazy.
But
I can see
this
that.
is essentially how it works.
Yeah.
You put in a text that you want. You don't want to go too far with the stability. I'm still kind of learning where the sweet spots are.
That's okay. I'm still a little unstable.
But it doesn't take long to generate.
No.
A quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
I like the reverb on it too. It comes through twice. Nice.
A quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
A quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
See, that's pretty close.
It's not bad. Not bad. Now, let's see. Probably if we started getting into if you started typing in big words, like scientific stuff like that, it probably would not do very well with that because it's might not be well trained. But that's okay.
I tried having you read some Poe.
You did. I like that. Hey, you got that there?
Quote the Raven.
Quoth the Raven, nevermore. Nevermore. When I heard that, I was like, that's definitely me. And I'm like, why do I not remember reading that? And that was why, because it wasn't me. Because a couple of the phrases, I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think I would say that word that way, but it was definitely very close. Very impressive. Because that AI is doing its job.
And it does actually, as you play it over and over, it does improve on itself.
Yeah.
This is something I've been noticing. Yeah, let's see what the Poe with these settings does.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, Suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more."
I gotta tell you,
This it is.
Cyborg Glenn is pretty good.
He's trying to put me out of work. I don't know though.
And I noticed something. You know, we were wondering earlier about certain characters, and I noticed here, like the lines, the dash does actually add a pause.
Sure. Yep, you've got to be able to influence it somehow, and that would be one way. And also, like with the prompts for the AI graphics that we were doing, we were talking about emphasizing or putting extra weight on certain parts, and you could do so whether it was with brackets or whether it was with exclamation points. Were two different ways of adding more weight to certain phrases.
Yeah.
So that's similar kinds of things. Like we have to know the syntax of what kinds of control characters we can use with the language there.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed earlier while I was setting things up with Ange. If I did the words in capital, it would give it emphasis.
Right. Now, all caps or just the beginning cap?
I did all caps for certain words, and it really does emphasize when you do all caps like that.
Nice. One thing that would be cool would be if they had something like the, you know how we can do the automation lanes in BandLab, for example, or in a DAW. You have an automation lane where you can tell it to volume up, volume down, things like that. If you could take, the robot voice and have it go on there and then basically real time tell it, more intense, less intense, higher, lower, and give it an automation lane like that.
Oh, that would be awesome.
That would be a kind of an easier way to get that to work together, to kind of fool it to sound more, kind of like the way they do with when you quantize and then it's too quantized. It's like, okay, now humanize it, like unquantize it a little bit, like, a little nudge here, a little nudge there, a little nudge here, a little nudge there towards random, just to get them off of, this one's a little louder, this one's a little softer, and that way it sounds much more natural instead of it just being like tuka taka tuka taka.
I wouldn't be surprised as they develop this that they make a VST or a piece of software that's more DAW-like with those kinds of functions.
Yeah.
It would make sense. They're developing this for book reading and things like that. So,
and even just chatbots. Even just a chatbot to respond to you, if it does so with a voice that sounds relatively natural, it would be more, people would be more inclined to respond naturally to it.
Yeah. The whole reason why this is starting to take off is because GPT is taking off.
Yeah.
So this complements that whole GPT.
Give it a voice. Yeah, absolutely. Crazy world we live in right now. And that's the thing is, where AI was 5 years ago compared to where AI is today, and then now think about where it'll be in 5 years, and it's going to be even that much more of a shift than it has been in the last 5, and that's crazy.
Yeah, even just the last year, I got to say, in the last 6 months, you're hearing GPT everywhere. Like it's been in the news the last 3 weeks.
More people are understanding things that they can do with it, uses for it, and it's really, your imagination is the limit, just go crazy. And some people are saying, they worry, like they put on their tinfoil hat and they're like worried that, it's going to get, what if it gets too smart and does this or breaks out and this and that? And it's like, well, it's not that kind of an AI. It's not an artificial general intelligence like you would put into an android to walk around that, can express itself and learn its body and things like that. We're talking about lines of code. These are all very segregated, very systematically closed off in what they do. They're very specialized, I should say. They do a very specific thing very well, and they don't have a general, sense of self and things like that. So you don't have to worry about that with these particular AI.
Exactly. It's sandboxed AI.
Correct.
It's focused on sounding natural, analyzing the voice. The way this one works, you upload 2-minute samples of a voice. Yep. And it analyzes it, and that's what its intelligence is designed for. Not taking over the world.
Nope. And that's the thing is we have seen, such advances that, people are right to be, concerned about the ethical use of AI. And the fact that we're not the only player in this market. I mean, there's people in countries that have much less ethical constraints on them doing AI as well. So what are they doing, and what are they releasing accidentally or on purpose? And that's another thing to be concerned about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Google right now is really ramping up. GPT kind of lit a fire under Google's ass. They're like, wait a minute, we're the kings of AI, and they want to kind of control GPT, but it's not their code.
Yeah. And it's out there. I mean, the genie's out of the bottle at this point, too. I mean, there's enough people who have their own collaborations, even on the Google Collabs there, of how to do certain things with AI and all that, that it's more, more or less common knowledge in terms of you can get the information. It's not controlled by any one person. Like, we know how to do it. The main thing comes down to the training sets. And also with the stuff that I was doing with the Google Collabs is you can download it all right from there and do it all on your own resources if you want, rather than using the Google servers for the calculations. If you have your own graphics card and you have your own good machines set up, you can bring the code down and do it yourself. So you're not beholden to them for it. You can have it all right here.
Yeah, and that's
which is cool.
The next. This does tie into Google Collab.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be something I'm going to want to look at, because they give me 50,000 characters a month for $5.
Right.
But as you know, with the imaging AI you were playing with,
you can burn through that real fast.
Eventually, it's like, oh, I did that in 24 hours.
Yep. Now what? Yeah, exactly. But that's also, knowing what the limits are means that, okay, like when I did realize, how many hours a month or whatever that I could do the graphic stuff for what I was doing, it was like, okay, just kind of work that in and figure, okay, that's, a couple hours a day for whatever, a couple of weeks, and then take some time off and then go back to it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, generating 24/7, like new images all the time, because I already have so many images. Like I could spend weeks just going back and cataloging what I have already, and just because I would get a general idea of something and just give it very few parameters for the AI for the graphics, and just say go, and then it would just give me 50 or 100 iterations of different things that are all vaguely similar based on what I asked for.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
the
very cool.
image generation starts to matter more when you start thinking like video.
Right.
Because 30
Specific frames,
a
and
second,
yeah.
Well, 30
Yeah.
frames a second, those images build up real quick.
Sure. And that's why, what they're also trying to do is minimize that time by kind of not necessarily, even if you're watching a video that is 30 frames a second, that doesn't mean you have to actually draw 30 frames a second. It's more like if you knew here's a starting frame and you know where you want to be in 2 seconds, that's 60 frames later.
Yeah.
So you say, I'm here now, 2 seconds from now I want to be there. And it can fill in those intermittent frames much more quickly because it knows what's not changing frame to frame. And it can leave that stuff the same and just copy the whole frame and then say, okay, now these little things changed a little bit.
Yeah, smart animation AI would take like the, you remember Flash, right?
Sure.
Smart AI would take the Flash approach where it does tweening and, does math to get the object from here to there rather than generate an image and an image and an image to make it move.
Because numbers are a lot faster and equations are a lot faster.
Yeah, well, that's why Flash was such a big thing in the early days of the web. Like, vector shapes are very tiny, whereas a pixel, takes up bytes. And when you wanted to animate things, you could animate a lot faster with a drawing of a circle than an image of a circle.
Yep. And that's what makes it faster and faster. We find better ways to do things, whether it's through equations, like we were talking fractals at one point, and being able to estimate shapes using whether it's fractals, whether it's using graphic image. They use like solid guessing was one of the modes with fractals.
You've seen how like fractal generation, generating fractals, especially when you're animating them. You see how hard the computer it's not doing that in real time because generating a fractal still takes a lot of thought.
Some of the YouTube videos of it's like 4K fractal trip or whatever, like just super high definition, but it's like a 4-hour video where you're just zooming forever into the same fractal. It's pretty crazy. I mean, some of that stuff. I mean, that's some powerhouse machines, and it took a long time to render that.
Yeah. When they're generating those 4K like visuals like that, those are not generating in real time.
No, unless they have Jason's machine. Jason's machine could do it.
Jason's machine is gonna have to think a little bit.
Well, for his, he would have to close some of those tabs, and then it'd be fine, as long as those tabs are closed. But what are the odds of that, right?
And
Pretty
not
unlikely.
Not be playing Call of Duty while you render.
Right. Yes. Yes. No multitasking. That's like you let the machine. Like I want the machine to think about what you're doing, and you just do it right now. And then when you're done, we'll talk about doing something else. But for now, focus on that. Get the machine to just crunch for like hours.
Oh, and hopefully sometime this year, we're going to be taking a look at new machines. I'm shopping for an i9.
Nice.
I'm getting the specs and the details now,
Mm-hmm.
because sometime in the next 12 months, I'm getting one.
Sweet. RTX i9. Yeah.
Yeah, the RTX is actually the real excuse,
Mm-hmm.
but the i9 cheap in price compared to what it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's going to
And
having
having a machine with a serious amount of memory is going to be a good change for you too.
Well, I
Yeah,
got
me,
32.
Nice.
but
Oh yeah, that'll do.
Going to 64.
Even 32 is more than you should need for most of what you're doing. It's like they usually say, unless you're doing intensive graphic editing, and you sometimes do intensive graphic editing. So
Yeah. Well,
that's
when
where
when I'm doing After Effects or Premiere,
yeah.
I am using that whole 32.
Yeah. And that's where, what would the difference in render time be if it was 64 with the RTX instead of the 32 with the RTX?
Well, the
would it be that
RTX
big a difference? But that's the thing.
RTX would help with the rendering
That's
time.
the big difference, yeah.
Because of the MPEG compression.
Mhm.
It's built into the RTX hardware MPEG compression way faster than CPU compression. So the memory
offloads,
wouldn't
yeah.
help it as much, but the MPEG compression on an RTX is night and day.
And the combination between the two, like right now you don't have the RTX and you don't have the 64. So like if you had both, that would be a whole boom, 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 like get both sides and the i9, like
Yeah.
jack all of those up to the new level, and all of a sudden everything would be like blowing your mind how fast everything's happening.
Yeah, what I really want the 64 gigs for is for loading audio samples.
Sure.
When I'm loading in Halion, like
Mhm.
my average piano samples are taking 4 to 8 gigs just for one sound.
Mm-hmm. That's a bunch.
Yeah, and I don't do just one sound in a track.
No.
Usually, MIDI you get 16, and with Halion you get 4 synthesizers at one time. So 16 times 4.
64.
If I'm actually filling each of those instruments, eventually you eat up all the RAM, and now your sample's loading from the hard drive, which
Yeah, and that's what kills things.
can't get real-time play out of that.
No. I mean, solid state, it's not that slow, but it's still, it's still
Not
double hitting the
RAM
drive
speed.
too. Yeah, it's not RAM speed, and your machine, your drive is trying to do other things as well. So, it can't focus on that entirely while it's doing other stuff. Tricky.
Yeah, that's the other, when I get this machine that I'm looking forward to, in a good modern SSD.
Mhm.
I don't have an SSD drive in any of these machines, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I have 2 in this one, but one of them's only 150 gig, and the other one is 450. So the 450 is now my primary drive. The 150 was the primary drive before. I was just using it for just the operating system and nothing else back before.
Yeah, and that's good
Then-
for that.
And when I upgraded, it was okay. Now I'll use the 450 for just the operating system, and then take that 150, and I made that the Call of Duty drive. So like I just took everything off of that, just made enough space on that so that I would have another solid state that's not the primary system drive to use for stuff like that. And then I have the terabyte for for that stuff, and the external 2 terabyte for storage.
Yeah, the platter
But everything's
drives
full,
make-
though.
The platter drives are good for archiving.
Mhm.
A game that you might not play a lot, or you're not playing at the moment,
Mhm.
move it to the platter, and keep the ones that you're playing on the SSD.
Yeah, I found, like I was saying, I found one. I'm constantly out of space, but then I go look and I found a Steam game that I haven't launched in 3 years that's taking up 120 gigs on the drive. And by getting rid of it, it's not like the game's gone. It's just, I took away the game files so that now if I want to play it, I have to re-download the 120 gigs. But having 120 gigs of free space is way better for me right now than just having that game sit there, until the next time I might play it, years from now. So I reclaimed that space at least. So working with something here. But yeah, big space is my next big upgrade, and I would like to get a machine upgrade soon. I do have the RTX, but that's like the one saving grace on this machine. I think I'm still
that
only using.
RTX is migratable. Like,
Yeah,
it's one less thing you'd have to worry about. You could take that along with you to your next machine.
yep. Had it for a little while now. Hopefully, it would still be good. It was the first, like when they first started to get quote unquote affordable, is when that card is when I jumped in and got it. But when I jumped to the next machine, like I'm using an i5 right now, so jumping to an i7 or an i9 would be a huge upgrade. Going from 16 gigs to 32 or 64 would be a big upgrade. Getting some space in the here would be good.
And the funny thing is they got affordable for a moment, and then they went back up in price. Because I was shopping for them last year, and the cheapest one I could find was $350.
Yeah. And that's the thing. At one point, you were talking nowadays, 8 terabytes internal, and it's or external, whatever. An 8 terabyte drive. It's probably not that much. Where it used to be, way out of range.
At $150 now, I'm looking at 10 and 12s. That's the sweet spot for 150.
Nice. And 150's not bad.
12 terabytes. I could replace 2 drives in my Plex with that.
Yeah. I could put everything that's in my machine 4 times over in that. So I could put everything from my machine in there and still have 3 times that much space free, which is nice.
Yeah,
and that way I would, one of the first things I would do is turn on the local copy for my Dropbox, because Dropbox is up to probably over 3 terabytes or whatever now too. But I just don't have any copy local. It's all just in the cloud.
Yeah.
So I would just make a copy local.
You should have a copy of your cloud data.
Yep.
If Dropbox is anything like my iDrive, because I pay $100 a year for that 10 terabytes on my iDrive, but they give me once a year. They will mail me a drive, no charge. I can copy everything that's on my cloud from a physical hard drive, back it up here, send them back to Drive, and it costs me nothing.
Yeah, and my problem with that is copy it over here onto what? Because I have no space. That was the whole problem in the first place. But when I want to get a copy of it, all I have to do is...
I have a spare 15, 20 gigs here for future data.
Yeah, 15, 20 terabytes.
Terabytes, yeah.
15, 20 gigs, that's what I got free. And that is not sufficient. But yeah, no, when I do have, when I get an 8 terabyte or larger drive, it would just be, turn on the Dropbox app local and just say make a local copy, and it'll just bring it all down. It'll keep it synchronized. So then anytime in the future, it makes it that much easier also when I want to upload things. Instead of having to go physically upload them, as I copy things into that folder, it'll automatically synchronize as it has time.
Yeah, and it's
so
nice
it'll queue it all up.
If you're synchronizing a little bit at a time like that, it's not so bad to cloud sync. If you plug in like an 8 terabyte drive and say, okay, now synchronize to the cloud, then you're going to be waiting a little while.
Yep. That's a bit of a different story.
Yeah, and I'm still hesitant to turn on cloud syncing. The only place I've actually done it is with my little Google Drive, where we share with Ange, some of our content.
Yep.
It's only 15 gigs, so I know that there's not going to be major file moving with 15 gigs.
When I first hooked up the Dropbox and started putting stuff into it, I started with it local synced. So it was always I was always using it locally synced until I started running out of space because I was putting too much stuff in the Dropbox and didn't have room to have a copy up there. So I figured the copy up there I know is backed up. I know it's safe as far as if a platter somewhere fails, I'm not losing that data because of the way they back up their servers. Whereas if I lose a platter here and it's the only copy, then I lose the platter and I lose the stuff that's on it. So
and
I figured it's better to have it all up there.
When cloud storage really started to get big in the early 2000s and they started pushing people use the cloud to back things up, I was against it initially because I was like, I don't want your tax data, your work files. I was like, I don't want those in a cloud because the potential to get hacked or stolen is there the moment you do that. But the encryption's gotten better, the security's gotten better, and logically it is good to have an off-site. Any business that doesn't have off-site data backup, you have a fire, your data's gone.
Yep. And that's why, when I was doing network operations, I was the guy who had to bring down the tapes, like a case full of tapes, and hand off the tapes to the guy. He would bring me a case back, and I would hand him a case. So
BlackRock.
No, not BlackRock. Who were we using? This would have been 10 years ago anyway, so it was a while back. BlackRock, when I was working at BlackRock, it was different.
They were still doing it back then.
Yeah, well, I was working desktop support when I was over at BlackRock, but this was over at Shiseido when I was doing the network administration. So when I was over there, I, bring down the case of tapes and trade them off with the guy. Basically, the idea is you're taking last night's backups that just got that cooked, and you're putting a copy into a box and sending it away so that it's not in the same physical building. So if this building gets, falls into a hole in the earth or whatever, there's a copy of the data somewhere, and they're just holding it off site for a couple of days, and then once they've held it a couple of days, they bring it back, and then it goes back into the rotation.
Yeah, and the tapes are so much more cost. At least they used to be. We're kind of hitting that like crux point where drives are actually so freaking cheap that like the tape savings is small at this point.
At the same time, this is also where a lot of people are just offloading their entire server rooms to be virtual or to be managed at a centralized location that's not their problem anymore. Like we used to have our own server room with all of our server racks and everything right on site. Then we packed them all up into the server cabinets and shipped them off to a location where they're being managed, somewhere else. And that way, there's much less of all of that we have to worry about because they're already over there, so they're dealing with any backups that have to be done already in their environment. And if a server goes down, we have hardware problems. Instead of having to call IBM when you get a bang light on a drive, you just they take care of all that for you. Like we shouldn't even have to deal with it. It should already be handled before we even get the alerts. If it's working properly.
And the way they back up now, a lot of times it's snapshots and disk images, which can significantly reduce the amount of size and easier to manage and easier to restore. Like, we lost the machine. We got a new machine. Take the image. 20 minutes later, boom, the machine's back up.
Yep, and that was one of the things we did. If it was going to take you more than 15 minutes to fix something, re-imaging or getting a machine
doing
imaged.
It the wrong way if you spend more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, this is going back 15 years also. So, 15 years ago, even if it was going to take more than 15, 20 minutes, it was like, okay, re-image, not re-image that machine, but take that machine, bring it up to our bench area, take a new machine, it's got a fresh image on it. You just grab it out, log into it as the user. It starts bringing down their profile, installing the apps and shortcuts they need. The only thing they really don't have is their PST files, and that was the thing where, that's where it became a nightmare, is trying to get PST files over.
Outlook.
I need my archives.
Pain in the ass in the 90s.
I need all my archives. I'm like, you've got 30 gigs of archives or whatever. It's like at the time, it was just ridiculous amounts of archives. We could map you to them, but it's going to take so long for you to actually open and get into them because of how big they are. But anyway, that's getting into a whole another world of stuff.
Hey,
but the main idea was the servers and backups. A lot easier now.
That's the IT side of all this.
It is. It is the talking IT side, yes. We do some of that as well. But this is more of a musical program. There you go, yeah. Charge! And then you go up one.
No, now you're just showing off.
Well, that's how you build the intensity at the hockey game, because you're doing that phrase, and then as you bring it up a little bit more.
Yeah, it works in baseball too.
Yep. Take me out to the ball game. Who knows?
Glenn's auditioning for the minor league New Jersey team.
So let's root.
1, 2.
Something
Swing,
like that.
bada.
Hey, bada, swing, bada. Fun stuff. But again, that's just all, you've heard the song before, whether you know the notes or how it goes. The same thing whether it's a keyboard or a guitar. You find a note and you kind of lock into it. You go, that sounds like the first note, and you just kind of work from there.
And what you were doing there is a lot like, what this guy was talking about with phrasing and vowels and finding how notes and vowels work in lines.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big key to figuring out what notes you should be hitting.
Yep.
That's
And
another trick.
the one biggest secret or trick is if you can't find the note, or you tried all of them and you can't figure out which one it is, it's probably the same note. It's probably the octave. Because that's where, like, or if somebody goes, like, there's a phrase, and they're like, where's it go next? It goes right back to where it was, and that's where you're not thinking of that note because you just hit it, but sometimes it is just that one or the octave for that one. Piano and guitar. Now, we've been going for about an hour now, so we should probably play a video of some kind. Oh, I got a key stack.
Actually,
which key is that?
We didn't give him our intro tonight, so
That's true.
we'll break up this hour with that, and we'll be right back.
Yep. See you in a couple. Little ambient noise, yeah?
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now, for me, that would also be something where I would use, like, volume automation and, like, bring that from the bottom, like, bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like, stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the
I
right
didn't
spot.
even notice. 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way. Just like that.
It was destiny.
Destiny. It was destiny to be that way.
You saw that little picture of Ange with the blue hair there towards the end? That's
Yeah.
what I want robots
I like that
to
one.
look like.
There was one of the Snapcam filters with the blue hair, and there was another one that was with the pink hair. They're both good.
Yeah, she's got to be going nuts now that Snapcam's not an option.
Yeah, I didn't catch. I should have caught video of me, like, with all of them, like, doing different ones. Antonio Banderas, the Terminator, like, getting all those. I should have gotten, like, a little clip of some bit of all of that.
Well,
But I
I
didn't.
think those filters are going to find a home. There's a lot of people out there right now that are, like, demanding.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is the whole why did they go away thing.
I have suspicions because 2 days after they stopped it on the 25th of January, 2 days later they got subpoenaed and Congress is investigating them.
Gotcha.
Ties to TikTok and other things.
Mhm.
So I think some of that might have been, planning ahead of time.
What I will say is that the idea of the filters is good enough where I don't think that idea goes away, even if Snapcam themselves are no longer going to be the ones bringing it to us. Like, even just in, whether it's in Zoom or Restream or whatever, there's places where you can get avatars or masks or things like that. And, some of those will get to the point where, and again, people who wrote some of those filters were made, end user submissions. So, like,
And
people
that's
still
just
know how
it.
to do that. So, yeah.
The studio where you would build those filters, that software can be remodified, and basically this is kind of a standard that's just waiting to become a standard.
Yep. And again, I welcome it. I was liking what it was doing. Like that big wizard beard, like that was flowing in the breeze. Like, that one was good.
Yeah,
I like that too.
I'd like to see that become an open standard that no company controls.
It's too good of an
that's the
idea,
kind of
yeah.
standard that belongs to
The
software.
world. The world. We're going to rule the world.
The best standards have to be open. Can you imagine what MIDI would have been like if one company owned it? Yamaha tried to. Yamaha tried to dictate, like, in the early days, and they didn't like the open standards, so they created their XG MIDI, which still exists.
I was going to say, is that the Betamax?
Well, here's the funny thing. The only difference between XG MIDI and general MIDI is essentially 1, because with the XG, the presets start at 1
Instead of
whereas
0.
In general, maybe they start at 0.
Yeah.
Other
It's
than
supposed to
that,
start at 0. Everything starts at 0.
Yeah. Other than that, not a hell of a lot of difference in the standard.
Yeah, and that is annoying though, because that means that what you're expecting on patch 13 is on patch 12. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a pain in the ass.
It can fuck you up because
Yeah.
when you're trying to get the steel string guitar and all of a sudden you hear the nylon.
Or you get the overdrive, you're like, what?
Yeah, and same thing. Yeah, distortion is like 25 or 24, and overdrive is 25.
The clav. That's a little bit of a D minor pentatonic. But with a D major in the middle. So what would that be? Good stuff. I gotta get the other camera back for the hands, so we can get the camera from up there that was looking down at the hands.
So you're gonna compete with that German guy with the pretty hands?
I don't think it'll be overhead for the camera, but it's just that the one that I had pointing at the hands is this one that I'm using right now, which I had to move over there in order to use it. But the one I was using is over there. You over there. But the one that I was using is over there, and that's right where the one built into the monitor is too. The one built in is terrible, though. We talked about that. It's like a 640 probably. It's old. The monitor's been around for a while. But the one I was using, it's on top there. For some reason, it didn't come on when I started. So I'm just gonna give it the eyebrow and be like, "You better work next time, sucker."
Well, and that's another one that I'm shopping. With this i9, I might do a couple of kills at once and see if I can get a good deal. 360 cameras have come down drastically in price
Right.
in the last 12 months. And around 300, there's a model out there that is giving specs like a $1,500, $2,000 camera.
Now that current view you got right there, that current view is a really good shot. Like just that one camera catches like this whole side of keyboards, the monitors all on the back, and the monitors up around that corner behind you almost.
Yeah, and
so
that's
most of where you'd be in the room, you'd be on that camera for starters.
That's a Motorola phone.
Nice. And this one catches the whole back, the whole other corner. Nice.
Yeah, and this is a USB cam.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I do like the auto cycling too. That's very cool. Something I could look at as well when I get the others.
That's a plug-in for OBS, free.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you basically
You say that one, and that one.
you pop in the video sources that you wanted to switch between. You pop in their names. You don't even have to select them. You just put in their names and it cycles through them.
Nice. Now, would that also do transitions in between them if you wanted, or is
Yeah.
it all just
Yeah.
Nice.
It's got options to use certain transitions, how much time you want between the transitions, how much time you want the camera to be there.
Fully customizable. Most excellent.
You don't want to get too carried away with the transitions, though. If you're switching cameras, you generally want it to be quick and clean, and otherwise you fuck with people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like the way you got it set up. It's good. Good transitions and everything.
Yeah, I did it for this amount of time because I was going to make some, performance videos. And I wanted it to basically switch between, hitting the keyboard and anything else I might be doing.
Now, do you think having 3 inputs active at any given time from cameras, is that adding a whole lot of overhead on the machine, or does that seem to digest it just fine, right?
No, it's just basically running a little timer.
But with 3 cameras in general, instead of just one camera, if it's affecting, if that causes any, lag on your stream or, what you're trying to bring down if you're trying to broadcast to 3 cameras at once.
Not with this machine. I mean, you've seen me actually run all 3 at the same time, along with the key site and, other things.
And sometimes 2 of them connected into a Zoom or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, it can handle all of that pretty good.
Nice.
And this machine's, 2012 Dell. It's not a powerhouse.
Not a speed demon or a powerhouse. 2012, dude, you're getting a Dell.
Yeah.
probably about in that time frame.
Oh no, that goes back to 2000. That little stoner got us through the 90s.
Yes, he did. Not a bad job, right? Dude, you getting it down.
I would have took that gig too.
Not a bad gig.
He sold them a shitload of computers.
That's true. Yeah, there it was. Just bringing up one of the ones for the charts that I was looking at last week.
Oh, you see me. I see you.
Oh, you see me seeing you? Oh.
I see your link.
I see something over
DM
here.
it to @Angified.
And we'll find the other one. Because that one, that's the one we looked at last week. That was the minor one. So it had that going. That's all right. Now, the one that we were looking at on the keyboard. I got the vibes going now. They sound kind of quiet, though.
They sound good though, like vibes should.
And the marimba and the xylophone. I don't spend a lot of time with a lot of the other ones. Things like a percussive organ. Or a rock organ, like one of those. A jazz organ, any kinds like that.
Oh, I had some fun with organs last week. You know that song, "Whiter Shade of Pale," which
Oh, yeah.
you know we were playing it one night in the back, and
Yep.
it clicked in my head. This was one of those bucket list songs. I was like, oh, I've been
Nice.
wanting to learn this one forever, and I think it was you who played it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do that one in
Yep.
the next
That was
24
one-
hours.
That was one of the ones that I heard, cousin Jeff, we were playing it the one day, and Jeff was doing the chords, and for the bass line I was struggling because I was just, looking at this chord changes all over the place. It happens so fast that it's, you really, I was stuck just doing like root notes the whole way through, and it just doesn't sound quite right. So he was like, hey, how about something like this? And he like grabs, I give him the bass to show me what he had in mind, and he played it. I was like, holy crap, that is like perfect. Let me video that. So like I took a video of him just running through that little part of the bass line for me, and then I took it home and I worked on it, and I got it worked out to where I can kind of do it. So it is kind of like a melody line that flows through the chord changes rather than just being the root note of the chord change each time as we go.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it helps the song flow a little better.
And when you look at the different parts, I'm really glad I went through all. It's one of those songs where, on the organ side, it's got fantastic chord arrangements and the way that the chords approach with the organ. And on the bass side, it's just so nice and simple, walk down. And then you get to the melody. And the way that the singer sang on that song really stands out,
Yeah.
for a song of that time. It really was ahead of its time.
Yeah. And a great song. It's a great pick.
I had no idea. This is one of those songs you probably know from a band you've never heard of. Procol Harum.
Procol Harum,
You
yeah.
recognize that band name?
Yep. Never been to a Procol Harum show, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, you would have had to have been born in the 60s.
Yeah, well, nope. I was not.
Actually, you would have had to have been born in the 50s.
I was definitely not. But that's okay. Child of the 70s. That's what happens. 70s were good, though. And got to see some good stuff with, we were talking the other day about, seeing the Grateful Dead and seeing Pink Floyd. And I've seen Grateful Dead, I've seen Pink Floyd, I've seen Rush, I've seen the Allman Brothers, I've seen Skinner.
I would have loved to see the Dead in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I didn't see him in the 70s. I saw him in the 80s.
I saw
late
him
80s,
all the way through the 80s and a couple of years of the 90s.
Yep. And yeah, a couple of years in the 90s, and that was about it. And the thing was, I hadn't, I don't even remember if I had even really heard of Fish at that point. When I was no longer seeing Dead shows, I just, kind of fell off of the music scenes entirely and didn't really go to see any concerts for a bunch of years. And then when I did get back into going to shows again was with my buddy Mike when he got me back, when he got into Fish, because he had been into Fish the first time around and then in I guess the early '90s at least, and then when by the time we were getting back to it, it was in the 2000s at some point. And so we watched, for years we'd gone, many shows we've gone to. We haven't gone recently, but I want to say,
Are they still touring?
oh yeah. I mean, I still
Really?
see. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The last time I went to see them, I don't know if it was the last time, but one of the more recent times I went to see them was when they did the Baker's Dozen shows at the Madison Square Garden in New York City, and it was 13 shows all basically in a row where they didn't repeat a single song for 13 shows. So 13 shows of all different songs every night, and every night had a theme to it. So like one night was like the strawberry donut theme, and one night was a chocolate donut theme. So it was a Baker's Dozen of donuts, but 13
They
shows,
really
not a
do
repeat.
They have that many songs.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they do a lot of covers too. I mean, that's where it's not all original songs, mostly though. And I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds of songs already just in that list. If you were to look at here's the list of what they played during the Baker's Dozen, it would be like, holy crap! And like they did that in a matter of weeks, because that's 13 shows. That it was over a matter of a couple of weeks as a concert run. And they still do they do a New Year's run, usually Madison Square Garden. They have. They'll do like a 4th of July show somewhere, but usually Mike and I are, we're tied up 4th of July anyway, doing our thing over there at the mountain. And then they got the New Year's run. They do summer festivals, like they do, summer dates, summer tour, I guess they would call it. And they'll be, I'll be getting email from them, Live Fish. They send out an email to tell you when ticket lottery comes up, so you can try to get tickets and all that kind of thing.
I'd love
But
to
it's been a
see
while.
them on New Year's Eve. That'd be a hell of a New Year's Eve show.
Absolutely. The most epic of the New Year's shows they did was on the Millennium New Year's Eve, where they played at an Indian reservation down in Florida, and they played from they played like 3 hours, let's say from 9 p.m. until midnight, and then they continued playing until literally sunrise. Like they played all night
Yeah.
at that gig. That's just crazy.
Yeah, I saw him at an Air Force base in New Hampshire one
Yep,
weekend,
yep.
and I don't remember the music ever stopping. Like
Mhm.
it started on Friday, and Sunday morning it was still going.
Yeah, they're crazy like that. And I saw them at a base in Atlantic City, which I didn't even know there was like an airfield, not an air base, but an airfield, I guess, in Atlantic City. I think it was called Bader Field, but that was one of the more recent ones. Like Mike and I drove down from up here to see the show, and it was we had tickets for 2 nights, so we saw them, either 2 or 3 nights down there. But we got there missed the first song or two, and got there just in time for most of the rest of that evening. But when we heard the songs that we missed, also it was oh, they're awesome too.
Well,
But
at
one
least you
of my
didn't crack your head like
No,
that
no, no.
other concert.
Exactly, Pink Floyd, no.
Oh,
But
that
one
was
of the,
Floyd, man.
that was Floyd, yeah. And I was in high school. I was in high school at that time. Yeah, but yeah, right on the back of the head in the parking lot. But with Bader Field, one of the things that was cool about that whole one, it was on. I want to say it was a Father's Day weekend, and for one of the songs that they did a song called "Brother," and they had all of the guys in the band's kids. So they had kids ranging from like itty bitty up to mid teens or whatever kids, and they all came out in a big wash tub. Like they carried out this big metal wash tub, and they put it down on the stage, and you didn't know anything was in the wash tub or whatever. You're like, what's going on with the tub? And then they started this song "Brother," and all the kids pop up, and they're all wearing ear protection headphones. So they all got their ear protection on, but they all hop up and everyone's like ah, so they got to experience on stage Fish show, looking out at the whole huge crowd,
Oh,
and it was very cool.
and they packed them in. I mean, even more than the Dead. Like the Fish shows, the amount of people when I actually went in,
Hmm.
biggest concerts I've ever been to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to see Fish, that's for sure, and with good reason. I mean, I've never been disappointed by any of the shows, and I mean, there's some people who can complain about consistency, like if they might see somebody, and again, I don't know, I haven't heard anything recently about how everybody's playing. I assume they're playing great, but over time, how sometimes you get people who complain about this or complain about that about a certain concert or show. I always have a good time. I mean, no matter what. I mean, I've never been to a bad show from anybody really, except
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
the first show,
same
In
here.
Excess, way back when. In Excess was a terrible show, but that was one of the first shows I went to. I think it was the second show.
Oh, and yeah, they were starting to lose it before he died. Like things were falling apart.
But that was like my second concert after I think Phil Collins or Genesis. I don't remember which.
Love to see Genesis.
But I saw that down in North Carolina, and I mean, I was living up here still, but up in Jersey, But then my sister was going to school down there, and this was her freshman year of college, and it was not when she was at Duke, but at North Carolina, NC State, so like nearby. So we went up, from where she was, we got a bunch of tickets and a bunch of her friends, and we just went up there and saw the show. It was very cool. At the time, I think I was only 14 or 15.
Oh,
But I was,
Glenn.
well, no, that was the other thing is that
only 6'5".
I was only 6'3". Yeah,
Oh, 6'3".
might have been 6'4" by then. Because when I was 13, I was yeah. Well, when I was 13, I was already 6'3". So this would have been a year later, or maybe 2 years later. So yeah, I probably was 6'5" actually, as to your first guess. But now I'm 6'6", so I'm even taller. But it was just her friends there could not believe that that this is her little brother who's only a sophomore in high school, because she's a freshman in college. But also she's much like she's 5'4" ish, like in that neighborhood, and I'm 6'5" at that point. So like the whole time when we're moving her in, it's my mom, my dad, me, and my sister, and as we're moving her in, it's like people are saying hi to me, assuming that I'm the freshman and that she's my pesky little sister who's helping us move. So she was just like, she's all frustrated and mad because it seemed like like everyone was paying attention to me and not to her, and I'm like loving it because I was, hey, what's up, dude? Hey, what's up? as we're moving
You're
in.
so cute too.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun though. And again, once they realized, what was going on, her friends were like, "Oh, we're gonna get your little brother drunk." And it's like, all right. so we go out and have some beers, did some appropriate college drinking games, playing quarters and stuff like that.
Yeah, see,
So,
I
it
had
was fun.
older cousins that would do that. I was the oldest, so I didn't have an older brother to get me drunk, but my older cousins did.
I believe it. And that's the thing, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. But again, I was big enough back then where it was just, no problem. I was 14, 6'3", whatever,
Well,
6'5".
at that
whatever.
size, we'd be getting you to go try to buy it at the package
Yeah.
store.
Yeah, and I would be able to because I really didn't have any problems buying stuff, even as young as 15. Like I didn't have a full beard or anything back then, but I did still have kind of a baby face. But at the same time, again, at that size, the person who's the cashier, a lot of times, at the time you could go to like, at a supermarket in certain places. You go to the supermarket and get beer or whatever, so
Yeah.
you could just go grab a 6-pack of beer along with whatever at the supermarket, and they
I
don't care.
still get my beer at a supermarket.
Yep. Some places you can, some places you can't. Some states, are very strictly regulated and all that. It depends where you are.
It's
I've
the only
been to
place
places
I-
where they're dry counties where you can't have alcohol there at all for any reason.
Oh yeah, North Dallas. I lived in one for 3 years. I had to go to another town in order to get anything.
Yep. Now, when I was living down there, I wasn't even 21 yet when I got there, so it didn't really matter to me. But I was working in a county that was a dry county, and I was living in a county that wasn't. So the people would just go to the county where I lived and would drink there in the big city of Lexington, Kentucky, and then go back over to Georgetown is where I was working.
Oh man, Kentucky, you'd think everywhere you could drink. They make
Yeah.
bourbon out
Yeah.
there.
Well, that's the thing is in Lexington there was a drive-through liquor store I could go to, and they would as I'm pulling through order through the speaker, and they just hand me a case of beer or whatever, and I go drive away. Never even had to get out of my car. And then when I get to work, it's a place where you can't even have alcohol at all. Can't get alcohol anywhere because it's a dry county.
Oh, I remember those drive-through liquor stores. we had one in Vernon,
Yeah.
which was really cool because as long as the person who was driving could buy the alcohol, we'd all be sitting in that car, and this person would be handing him bottles and bottles that no one person could drink at all.
Yep. But that's the thing is, hey, he's stocking up for the week.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
got money.
but
He's buying stuff. What do you want me to do?
This guy would be buying for like 10 people that night in
Sure.
one drive-through.
Yeah. And he was the hero of the evening. It's the way that works. But yeah, I didn't usually have to, be the guy to go get stuff because we usually just had stuff around anyway, or we stocked up well enough where it was just, it was never a big deal. Like for us, where sometimes for I guess some people like they don't drink till much later, and then when they do, it's like a big release or whatever, where they suddenly now just have to drink all the time, or when they do drink, they drink too much all at once, or all that
That's why
kind of thing.
it's good to get it out of your system. I actually stopped drinking for a decade. I turned 21, quit drinking, didn't have a drink again until I was 32.
Now, one thing was we were probably desensitized a little bit to it just from being, we used to go down to Puerto Rico for vacation, and down there they really don't care. Like, you can drink at any age. There is no drinking age.
Same with Canada when I was a kid. I
it's
used
not
to go
like,
to the bar
Yeah.
at 14.
Yeah. I used to go to the casino with my dad when I was, 13, or like 6'3" at 13, wearing a little suit, going to the casino with Dad. But I could get drinks there if I wanted to. And the thing was, again, it was not like you get totally hammered when you're 13. It's like it would be an after dinner drink. Like they had this chocolate liqueur or this 43, 43 is a beverage. It's like a very sweet after dinner liqueur. And sometimes we get that at the end of a meal. But it's like if you're with your parents and your parents are like whatever. And sometimes it would be at the bar, like swim up bar, like there was a big swimming pool, and you can like swim right up and like sit on a bar stool.
I always wanted one of those at my hotel.
Oh man, yeah, you got to be careful though, because you can get really drunk, and if you don't have to stand up right out of the seat, you could be even more drunk than you thought, and then you're getting up out of the water, and that could be trouble. Not that it was for me, because again, I was only like 13 and 14 or whatever. We were going there from when I was probably 1 or 2. I mean, we used to go down there all the time because we had my grandfather had a condo down there because he had a small plane, and he would fly down. It was a little 5-seater plane that we could just fly down in his plane. But sometimes we would even just go down, just taking whatever commercial airlines down, and then stay in the condo for a week. It was always over our birthdays too.
Gramps had his own plane. You lucky son of a bitch.
Yep. Well, he was a pilot. Yeah.
If I had a family member with a plane when I was a kid, I would have became a pilot.
Yeah, that's one of my regrets. Is I would have loved to become a pilot, and I think that now is the time where flying vehicles are coming real soon, and if those are going to be piloted vehicles, that's going to be a whole nother realm of flying. And I've done all the flight simulating games and things like that. I've always been fascinated by flying. I actually took the controls of the plane a few times when I was really small. But not like, okay, now land, and then you just sit back or anything like that, but more just like, sitting there with that, in the lap and like, okay, now just try a little this and a little that. You get a feel for how it feels.
If you could be a virtual taxi driver these days, flying a drone from, your apartment for people.
Yeah.
That'd be a hell of a job.
Yeah, we're not far off from that being possible, but there are still, I would have concerns about that anyway. Like, being in a taxi that somebody's driving from somewhere else, and then, something happens to their connection, like the cat comes over and steps on the keyboard.
Let me ask you this. Would you feel more comfortable with a self-driving car if you knew there was a human override and that there was at least a human in the background keeping an eye on that Tesla or that hovercraft?
Yes and no. If it were me keeping an eye on it while I'm in the car, I'm good with that. I like to be the guy with the override. I wouldn't want to be counting on somebody to be sitting there paying attention when a truck comes at me or whatever. If that's the situation there. I would trust the auto driving though, because the collision avoidance and the AI and all of that has gotten quite good, and they have quite a big database that they're building it on. And the more that it learns, the better that the AI gets with the driving. So I don't have an issue with AI being in control of that. Same thing like with air traffic control, controlling if we do get flying taxis, flying vehicles, having those controlled as a fleet, and then using transportation as a service where you just like the way you would call for an Uber now, and some guy drives up in a car, you just call for an Uber and just a vehicle just gets to where you are and you hop in and then it gets you to where you're going, whether there's a driver or not. That's coming where people don't have to own cars unless they have to haul shit places and things like that. So,
and if they handle it like the way that the FAA has handled, sky traffic, the machines doing that does kind of make sense.
That's one of the big things that's really prevented flying vehicles, I think, flying personal vehicles, is the fact that, it would just be accidents all over the place. If everybody could fly everywhere, anytime, think about the people that you see on the road sometimes and what they're doing, and now put them in a flying vehicle that you don't know what's in front of you, and you're just flying around like, we're good, we're just going to fly that way. Like, no. That's why it has to be, for that to work for personal vehicles and flying, there has to be some kind of a centralized
and that's why they're a
oversight.
little more anal about, like, space up there. Whether it's drones or flying cars or whatever you're going to put up there, you go up too high, they will catch you.
Yep. And that's, there's reasons for that. That space is controlled with good reason.
Unless
and we have to work around it.
Giant balloon, apparently. Like, hey, we'll ignore these giant balloons, but if you fly a drone up there, you're getting a fine.
Yeah. No, I was concerned about that too. My biggest concern was not if it was looking at something, because again, satellites go over all the time and can see things. There are things that you can detect from a balloon that you couldn't detect from a satellite, but I'm not even worried about that. What I would be worried about is if there were something that could do an EMP, on board something like that, because they could just be floating an EMP over top and then boom, like take out all the satellites that are over that area, and that's not good. So that is the kind of thing I would be concerned about. Not that that's what it was for, just saying that is something that could theoretically be in there. So that's why we as a people need to be concerned about stuff like that coming into our airspace.
Oh yeah. You got to think of the possibilities. I mean, a balloon set to self-destruct over a certain area that's loaded with fentanyl could just like rain down death.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I mean, that's kind of far-fetched and not very plausible, just as
But,
far as what you would base to.
I'm
But
not
I get you
suggesting
saying
that I would worry about that from, like, say, a country like that. But you know, when it comes to military strategies and things like that, the last thing you want is shit just like flying willy-nilly.
There'll be no willies and no nillies. Get him out of here.
Unless it's Willie Nelson. We
And
like him.
he's cool. I told you about that quote I saw the other day. I think it might have been one of Angie's. Either that or it just reminded me of the quotes that she usually has there about Willie Nelson talking about, well, what kind of planet are our kids going to be leaving for Willie Nelson and Keith Richards? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to be left. Because they're going to outlive everybody.
Yeah, he's a trooper. Got to give Willie credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that there was never a time where I was like particularly into any of his stuff or that style even. But I definitely have.
I always generally liked his music.
Over time, I came to
He never
generally
did
respect
anything
it.
that I thought sucked.
For me, it was that country. It was like I used to always say when I was growing up. Let's say for the first 20 years, maybe 30 years, if you had asked me about music, I probably would have said I like everything. I didn't like Springsteen, that was for sure. Like Springsteen was right out of the conversation before we even start. But like as far as what music I liked, I would say everything except.
Bruce is constipated, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, the voice is really what killed me. The songwriting's good, the instrumental's great, Clarence beautiful, but his voice, like he would start singing, no. But
yeah, Clarence was the reason why I always appreciated early Bruce.
Yeah, but that would be the Bruce scenario. But for me, it was more like the two types of music I really didn't care for much would be opera and country. And over time, I've come to appreciate country a lot more. Like back then,
opera?
I didn't like opera or country. I would have sang opera or yodeled, because I did yodel at rehearsal 2 weeks ago, and I shocked them with that a little bit. I had them put on Hocus Pocus by Focus. And that's one of those that definitely has some serious yodeling in it. So we had fun with that. But I don't think we're going to put that on the set list. But it was just one that we broke out of the air. He had his phone out to like play stuff that we could get a listen to it, because somebody might not be familiar with what jam it is. So throw it on with the on the speaker that he has there. Listen to it real quick. Get the jam and go.
Your dad was a big classical guy. You must have been hearing some opera.
Not so much opera.
Really?
Most of it was
He didn't
pretty
listen
much.
to it either?
It was pretty much all for him. It was all about the piano. So it was almost all classical music arranged for classical piano. So it was just piano and not even orchestral, where you'd have like your little part and then everybody else does everything else. It's more like he's doing pieces that are written for piano, for a single piano by itself. But he had, like I said, I've got a whole huge like storage tub that is just filled with sheet music, which I'm gonna have to go through and start looking through and see what's what. Because I think my with the Meticulous and everything else, my understanding of sheet music has gotten much better, to the point where I think I would be able to pick things out much more easily, especially if I would play a first couple of chords of something like from the sheet music, and then it would probably click, and I'd be like, oh, that's that song that I used to hear him play, and it goes like this. Like I remember how it sounds.
Yeah,
right.
I know that progression.
Exactly. If I know how it sounds, then coming into it from that side is easier. Just trying to go from notes on paper to music without knowing what it sounded like originally is very difficult. But if you know, I've heard this song 1,000 times and now I'm just figuring out how to play it from the sheet music, it's way easier because you know what it's supposed to sound like. So that first chord kind of guides you to where you're going.
Yeah.
Always helpful. But yeah, I've never been particularly good at sheet reading. Like I could never just take something and sight read it and play it at speed. But it's one of those things that, now I'm getting to the point where I could figure something out and probably turn it into something musical, in short order. Maybe not immediately, but not too, it wouldn't take as long as it would have in the past, let's say.
Hey, I got to say, my speed there has been improving just in the last, year.
Mm-hmm.
My ear recognition and my sight recognition improved more in the last year than the whole 37 years of music before.
Yeah. And one of the big things is even just looking at the Meticulous right here. Going from you got your middle C, and that's just always going to be that one that looks like that. The C above and the C below. The C below is
Yeah, Meticulous, I think, is a big reason why I've gotten better. Seeing it in real time really does speed up the recognition.
And recognizing that it's a line when it's the C over here, and they're on spaces when they're over here. So when you go to the octave, you're going from a line to a space and then to a line again. But that's all C octaves right there. So you can see how all the notes fit in between there if you have sharps and flats. And that's all right in the middle of the
I should
61
make a
key.
song out of that.
Oh yeah.
The easiest song ever written.
We call this song C.
See me.
Exactly. And that's the percussive organ, so it does have that nice little bite on the front end, so you can get a good sharp attack. And it still has a good hold, though.
And that brings me back to that whiter shade of pale. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was my challenge when I was doing it. The whole reason why I wanted to do it is I wanted to simulate that awesome organ sound that
Yeah.
they got from like 1967,
Mm-hmm.
and I really had to go hunt through all my organs on the Roland, all my organs on the Halion,
Mm-hmm.
and I used two new organs that I'd never used before to
Nice.
accomplish that kind of high and low that I don't know exactly which organ the original player used, but it had a combination of a church organ on the low end
Mm-hmm.
with like a percussive organ on the high end to give it that kind of flutter.
You get that
And
mix, yeah.
Yeah, between the two patches that I found, I think I got as close as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And that's where that, I want to say, it was probably in C, right? I think it was in C. But like I said, they had a lot of changes, and that was one where like you're going, when I was just looking through the chord changes real quick, or if I have, matter of fact, I probably have the sheet music from when I looked it up the other time.
Oh yeah, I think it's pretty basic.
Yeah. But like I was just trying to do it chord by chord, and by going through that way, I was like, wow, this song has just a ton. I mean, it's chord change every measure essentially, or
Yeah,
very quickly.
It was very progressive for a
Yeah.
1967 or 68ish.
It's not a
not
simple
your-
1-4-5 or anything.
Yeah, not your normal. And they were British, right? They were coming out of Britain.
I believe so. I would have to. Again, I wasn't. Never went to a show. Don't recall much about them other than that song. Like I always liked that song, but never really got into the history of it.
Yeah,
It was one that I probably know from the radio. is the
I
main
watched
way.
the video before I started working on it, and also the video was ahead of its time. It was a little silly. I bet you, after they filmed it, like some of the members probably were like thinking like, "Oh, this is so awesome," and then afterwards they were looking at it like, "Oh my God, I can't believe we did this." It was
Immediate
one of
regrets.
Well, you'd have the different band members. It's like when you take a band picture and the photographer says, "Okay, we want everybody looking in different directions except for the singer."
Right.
The singer is going to look at the camera and everybody else looks like they don't care and they're looking off to the side.
There's just so many
whole-
album covers.
Yeah, the whole music video was like everybody but the singer kind of looking around doing their own things or looking angry behind them.
That's a big one too. Yeah.
And then the singer was like the only one where like they'd move him and center him, and very funny for the time.
Mm-hmm. Nice. That would be fun. Just doing music video stuff, like whether it's the figuring out the choreography or like getting where everyone's going to be, what everyone's going to do, all that kind of thing. I remember a couple of the
And,
not even from a video, but
for the 60s, it's not like music videos were the norm back then. So like what these guys did then who would have thought 20 years later with MTV, this would be like a standard approach to rock videos.
Right. One was that I liked was a picture that Pink Floyd did at one point, early Pink Floyd, and it's like a sunny day outside, and they're partway in a house and partway out, but it's like they took a picture and there's a big photograph on the wall, and the photograph on the wall is of them like in a different pose, like in different places, like
Yeah.
around the yard, and then in that picture in that wall is a different picture of them in a different pose, like so it's like they probably took 4 or 5 pictures or whatever in different places around the yard, and then just interspersed one then in the next picture and the next picture. Just it was a really cool idea that I liked.
No, and Pink Floyd was just as experimental with their visuals and their photography and their artwork as they were with their music. I mean, another band that was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, always a fan, and that's where Pink Floyd had me early. I mean, I was a Pink Floyd fan from the very beginning, and that's basically when my sisters and my musical taste split when we were very young. Was when I started liking Pink Floyd and she started liking Springsteen and stuff. And
your sister's a Springsteen fan, no wonder.
yeah, that didn't help either, especially because she's older. So that when she got her license, she'd be up front, and
Forcing
she'd
you
be
to
controlling the radio. When she had her permit, for example, she's driving, mom's got to be up front. So I'm in the back, and Springsteen comes on. It's like, oh yeah, I'm like, duh.
It's making more sense.
And then if Pink Floyd came on, it was nope. She changed the channel. It's like
I'm kidding you.
I kill you. No, but we got along fine. The whole music thing was fine. That's your thing, and I'll do my thing, and we're good. Like neither of us had we didn't have stereo wars in the house or anything.
Yeah, the cool thing is I never had to share my CDs or my brother, my sister, musically they had their own direction. It was like having toys that you didn't have to share.
Sure.
My music collection was mine.
Yep. In the same way, with me, it was video games was my thing, for many years. Like, I was always into the computer, always into the video games, consoles, all that stuff. And she just never had the slightest interest in any of that stuff. So she was always doing her stuff while I was doing that. So
Yeah,
it
if
worked out
I
fine.
ever lost any CDs, it was always one of my friends who, you know how sometimes they borrow the CD but leave the case?
Oh, the worst.
Yeah,
Because then you
when
go
I
like, oh, yeah.
When I was ripping my whole collection, I have to say there was at least 25, 50 where I was like, where the fuck's the CD for this thing?
Yep. And it's not in the car.
And I know
Because you don't have a CD player in the car.
I know who took the CD because depending on what it was, certain bands, I knew which friends would have took it.
Well, who stole the De La Soul CD?
Grooves in the house.
Yeah, percussive organ is one of the ones I like a lot, especially up high. But it is nice when it has a good tail on it also. And that's where, like you said, the church organ, but also with, if you had something that's like that orchestral hit where it's just a very, very percussive, very much up front, but there's nothing behind it, take like that and then get strings behind it so that they kind of, build up into it. So it's the hit at first and then it kind of builds behind it if you hold.
I mean, the orchestral hits, very cool sound, but you have to use them judiciously.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to hold track of that, yeah.
Well, you don't want to be like... You hit too many notes with that sound, and although I'm using actually a good sound, but the general MIDI orchestra. That's the orchestra. Where's the hit?
I got the pizzicato. Tremolo.
There's the orchestral hit.
There you go.
Cool sound.
The error message. Error message in Windows. Critical
Yeah,
fail.
Oh, yeah. I crashed. I mean, they got a little carried away with that. It's a good finale hit, like right at the end of the song. I use one note.
Yep. But one very powerful note. Strings.
But if you tone the orchestral hit down a little bit, like this symphonica that I have, this has potential.
Yeah, that was nice.
See, and that's designed for.
There it is.
I used to know that.
And like you said, the orchestral hits don't do the job.
My old high school band, we used to do a like heavy version of the Fifth.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I like that one. Always liked that one. Trumpet is a good sound too, as far as. But you got to use phrasing.
Yeah,
You got to use
that
phrasing
one-
carefully with that.
That one has a good trumpet.
Let's see a trumpet.
Oh, it's a muted trumpet. Not the same effect. Combination trumpet section.
Nice.
Used to know that one too. Yeah, it works better with the synth brass. Yeah, there you go. I think you got it there. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, both those could work.
Channel your inner Harold Faltermeyer.
The Faltermeyer.
That was actually the first one that I learned in F sharp. The F
Nice.
sharp major? Or is it minor?
Minor.
Yeah, it is minor, huh?
The when you get that, the one step or the half step between the 2 and the 3 is the giveaway.
That was the first F sharp scale that I ever learned.
F sharp minor, so related to A major.
Yeah, and I actually learned that on an old little Radio Shack keyboard, you know, with the chiclet.
Nice.
Not
Where there's
even
like
actual
real
keys.
7 of them or 9 of them or
Yeah,
13
yeah,
of them,
yeah.
not many, right?
And it was like mono, like you couldn't hit multiple keys at the same time.
Oh yeah. Not polyphonic. Bummer. That's where certain sounds you gotta be able to hit chords.
Yeah. Sometimes the mono sounds, especially with like synth leads, I don't play them as much as I should. I am I want to do something for this Shinji synth contest,
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
and those are the kinds of sounds that like. When you get a mono sound like that, and if you can do some like guitar like shit,
Yeah.
it's almost like hammering on.
And you could do now. Is that the one that has the bend wheel that has the 4 directions, or just the 2?
The bend wheel with this one probably is. Oh, that's what happens when I go forward.
Yeah, that's modulation.
Scrambling my brain.
Yep. Yep. Does it also have a pulling back towards you, or is it just pushed forward?
This pitch wheel doesn't go backwards. It'll
Okay.
go forwards or to go left and right. And
Nice.
when it goes forward, it can go left and right forward. So
Mhm.
it can.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Queefer in the
baritone.
house.
My chat hasn't updated at all, so I gotta
Oh,
refresh that
that's-
nonsense.
That's why you heard a couple of loops there.
Yes.
been
yes.
been having to refresh it the last couple weeks. BandLab keeps timing out. Oh, did the sound die?
I muted myself so that I wouldn't cause a loopity loop.
I had to fart.
Mm-hmm. Megamind.
That's what a synth fart sounds like.
Yep.
Actually,
For the Barry Saxons down here. So low I don't even hear it. That's awfully low.
Oh, if you want to go with fart sounds for brass, can't ignore the tuba.
It's not a tuba.
Yeah, but it could be a musical fart.
Yeah, excuse me. That's still a tuba. It's just a really high tuba. That tuba is high, high.
A grand tuba. There's a grand tuba.
How about a French horn?
Now, French horn is one I actually do play with a lot. A couple of the tracks that I remastered over the last month, I use the French horn to do some of the melody. And, you know, sometimes I'd rather use like a French horn or a brass than some of the string parts,
Yep.
depending on the song.
Yeah. And it's all about the feel. I mean, you can get a totally different feel to a song using strings versus brass, depending on what you're trying to pull off.
Yeah, brass gives it a whole different mood. And you know, in the old days, strings were my go-to sound. Like, especially playing with bands in rock and metal, strings are very useful there. Brass, with keyboards, the old brass sounds really couldn't keep up with the noise of the band. Today's brass sounds, though,
Yeah, they can cut.
I would try a whole different approach.
English horn got much sharper than a French horn. These are all black notes.
And you know, one thing I noticed with English horn and French horn, they're categorized differently. Because
yeah.
in Halion, French horns are under the brass section.
Exactly. Yep.
English horn is actually under the wind section.
Exactly. It's right next to bassoon. So
Yeah.
that's why I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it fucked me up for the longest time. I was trying to find it, and same with saxophone.
It's between bassoon and oboe.
Yeah, like I didn't find my saxophone for like the first month I was using Halion because they put it under the winds. I guess when you use a reed.
Yeah. Makes sense. Clarinet, too. Piccolo.
Oh,
That's a
clarinet.
high piccolo.
Clarinet is another one of those instruments when I was young and dumb I didn't appreciate. Last couple of years, like the clarinet is one of my go-tos when I'm doing a melody track. It works really nice.
Yeah, it's nice and mellow, not too sharp. Good attack to it. Yeah, nice.
It's a good phrasing instrument.
Definitely.
And on a keyboard, it sounds so much cleaner than like a flute. Flute has always been a hard one for me to get a keyboard sample that I'm happy with. Like, this is my flute. I mean, it sounds like a flute, but it's so fucking breathy on the keyboard.
Yeah, it does sound like a toot 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 toot.
The alto flute isn't as bad.
Yeah, it's not as bad.
And the afro flute, I actually do like.
There's probably also an oriental flute of some kind in there as well, right?
Oh yeah. Actually, my Roland has some great winds.
For me, the pan flute has a lot of breath to it.
That's what I was gonna say. The pan flute has always been.
That's the SHHHhh.
I mean, it's got a little bit of bite to it. You got to play it gently with the weighted keys. The regular synth, the pan flute, you can kind of bounce a little better. With the weighted keys, you got to be careful because you hit it hard. That breath really
Cuts right in, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you really want to hear it. This one's bass plus lead. Doesn't really sound like bass, though.
Yeah, and that bass plus lead patch is another one of those general MIDI requirements.
Yep.
The 128 instruments that general MIDI makes up, bass plus lead, covers a lot of the 70s and 80s synth.
That was 87 on here, yep.
Yep.
88 is New Age.
Yeah, part of the pads. Yeah, general MIDI has like 3 or 4 pads, direct pads, and then there's a couple of them. Goblin is one, where it is a pad. It's just a special effects pad.
With this one, I like the fact that it's got a little bit of almost a bell sound to it. New Age. That was 88, so that was right next to the bass plus lead.
Where do they
and the warm
actually
pads.
put Goblin? I'm looking through my. they call it Fantasia on the Roland.
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it is a pad, but it's got that little bell to it.
The Halo pad has a lot of breath to it.
Yeah, Halo's a popular one.
But sweet. Not that hard to get that double. So you get that first rise and then one behind it.
Ah, there's my Halo pad.
Me with a Halo.
It's got a
I
little
do have
bit of a choir voice behind it.
How about me with a Halo? There's my Halo. Just for you, Ange.
There's my Halo.
Oh. And last time I did that, it wound up falling off, so we'll see how we do this time. I think it's happy. Anytime. Now what I should have done is made it a green Halo just for Ange, but maybe next time. We'll grab the remote and make it green. Hey, Kiefer, how you doing?
Good to see you, Q.
We got coffee time. And as a matter of fact, we're about to take another short little break. I was thinking we could do
Rolling around the hour.
rolling, rolling, rolling. Now, what did you have over there? Did you want to do the break video, or did you want to do the other video that I had, or you wanted to? Let's do the break video or something in the middle, and then we can sit down with the acoustic guitar one after.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Cool. That one's like 18 minutes long, so I'm not sure if we're going to do the whole thing or not, but we'll see.
I need one of those little clippy boards.
Yep. A little clacker. Clack.
Okay, you clack for us.
Okay. Clack. With a big arm. Little ambient noise, yeah?
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the
I
right
didn't
spot.
even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way. Yes, indeed.
Oh, you know I'm going to take that virtual Ange and find a way to make a rap inside that.
Yes. Absolutely. We will make that happen. We can do that with that. We could also get the guitar sheet up over here. I had that up here before. I can get that over. In the meantime, we're going to look at the video, which was from Active Melody, the Active Melody channel. Yep. It's one I don't remember looking at recently. I think we looked at one some time ago. But definitely some good stuff there for guitar as well. Let me share this one instead. Audio is that. But it's basically what I wanted to start with here is even just look at concept.
Oh, the Vange.
Oh, the Vange.
I feel like I've been
She's
getting
coming.
attacked by Vange my whole life.
She's coming for you. You better watch it, because the Vange attacks. The Avenger.
Well, Virtual Ange is a badass.
Yes, very much so.
And Cyborg Glenn doesn't take no shit.
He can read some Poe, though, for sure. Oh. Yeah, there it is. So the one that is for acoustic guitar from Active Melody, and just have to do that over there. Now again, this is it's about an 18-minute video, and we don't have to watch the whole thing, but we can definitely get started into it. Yep, Active Melody is the YouTube channel, and ActiveMelody.com. Yep, in the corner there. So nice and easy to remember. Easy to find. Brother Q, what's up, Maha? How you doing?
And we will add these into our descriptions for YouTube and make it easier to find over there.
Exactly. And this is connecting simple fill licks to the E, A, and D chord shapes. And those are some of the most common shapes that we use, or some of the first ones people like to use on the guitar. So understanding how to take those little chord shapes that you can just play any, the E and the A are two major chord shapes that you can use that are rooted on the sixth string, the fattest string, and then the A shape is on the on the fifth string, the next one down. So using those two shapes and then figuring out some of these chord fills that you'll see him play, they're not complicated, but you'll see that they sound great. They little pieces of melody, and the fact that they are in that same location. Like you can find them if you're playing in the key of C, then they're right there. If you're playing in the key of A, they're right there. You're just playing a few frets away. If you're playing in the key of D, they're right there and just a few frets away. So it's understanding that on guitar, once you learn these little licks and phrases, you have them in your toolkit, and you can break them out anywhere because they're movable when you're in the E or the A shapes.
And very convenient.
And very convenient. Yep.
How many licks does it take?
It takes a 3.
Hi,
right.
Maha, perfect timing.
Yep. Got some halo going on.
Yeah, we're about to lick this.
Yep. All right, here we go. Connecting the licks.
Okay, so we have a short lesson this week, but it's going to be full of information, practical information that you can apply right away to your playing, whether you're learning how to improvise or you're jamming with other people or even trying to write your own music. And it's really all around rhythm and fill lick ideas. And these are all tied to some basic chord shapes that you already know. Your A shape, your E shape, and your D shape. If you already know how to play those chord shapes, you're sort of halfway there. So this is really designed to be something that just about anyone can do. And you don't have to play this with a jam track. That's another added bonus. So as we're learning how to do this, this is something that you can practice on your own, acoustic or electric guitar, standard tuning. And so basically, I've got the lesson split into 2 parts. So in this video, we're going to go through everything that I played in the intro, note for note. We'll break it all down, and that'll be learning how to play this song in the key of A. However, if you're a premium member, I break down how to play this in the key of C, which is showing you how to do it without any open strings so that you can easily transpose and play it in any key. And so that's an extra thing that you get as a premium member. You also have access to the tablature for both the key of A, which we're going to learn in this video, and the key of C. So you get those extra tabs as well. So if you're interested in that, you can go to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP464. Okay, so this song that we're going to be learning is in the key of A, and it's 3 chords. An A chord, which is your 1 chord, an E chord, which is your 5 chord. So it goes from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. Then it'll go back to the 1 chord, and then at some point it goes to the D chord, which is our 4 chord. But basically that's it. A, E, and D. Those are your main chords that we're going to be using. And this is a call and response style of playing where the call is going to be a lick, and then the response is a rhythm or a chord. So you have a lick and then a chord that follows it. And I love doing these kinds of lessons. I've been doing them for years. If you like this kind of call and response thing, you can go to Active Melody and check out, just do a search for response, the word response, and you'll see lots of call and response things that I've done. Anyway, we're going to be playing this first lick off of this A chord. So this is the first thing. I want you to make this A chord. That's where we bar the first 4 strings on the 2nd fret. And we play strings 5, 4, 3, and 2. That's our A chord, and that's the A chord shape. But this lick, I want you to connect that lick to this chord shape. And here's what makes that easy is your major pentatonic scale, pattern 1, major pentatonic scale, is right there, right? And then your chord is right there. So your chord is actually inside of major pentatonic scale pattern 1. Now I know I've covered that many times, and some of you already know that. Probably most of you already know that, but there's somebody out there that is realizing that for the first time. And it's a big deal when you realize that, oh, off of this chord shape, I've got the major pentatonic scale pattern 1. So that means if I'm playing that chord shape here, so I'm playing still the A shape, but I'm playing a C chord, I've got C major pentatonic scale pattern 1, which means I can do licks, right? You start to connect your licks to your chords, and it like opens up everything. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to learn goes like this. Right? That's our first lick. We're going to slide with our ring finger from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret on that 5th string. To just pay attention to that. Be thinking about that major pentatonic scale pattern 1. That's where these are coming from. And then we go up to the 4th string. We'll play 2nd fret, and then we do a hammer on to the 4th fret. So we have a little box there, right? Now watch this. So this note, we're going to come down to the 3rd fret on the 5th string. Now I realize that note is not in the major pentatonic scale for A, but it is in the minor pentatonic scale for A. It's just this little kind of, it's almost like a passing note that gives it a little bit of bluesy feel just by touching on it. So we're going to keep the bar there on that 2nd fret, and we're going to play a hammer on. That's a hammer on between the 3rd fret and the 4th fret on the 5th string, and then an upstroke on the 3rd string, which is behind that bar there on the 2nd fret. So, and then the last part of that is just to hit the open 5th string. So all together, that lick goes like this. Right? That's the call. And hopefully you can see where that's coming from. Major pentatonic scale pattern. And then after that, we have the little rhythm part. Now, we're going to play a chord there. So it starts the open 5th string, and you strum chord. And then I'm going to play this, which is our 4 chord. That's our D chord. And then back to the 1 chord, back to the A. And to play that, instead of playing the D chord like this, we're going to play it like this, where we keep the bar on that 2nd fret, but we put our middle finger down on the 3rd fret 2nd string, and then we put our ring finger on the 4th fret 4th string, and we play strings 4, 3, and 2, those middle 4. And then we go back to the A chord. So you have... Now this, going to the 4 chord and back to the 1 chord, is something that's commonly used in blues. I think of it in gospel quite a bit. It's just something to do. Keep that in mind. If you're hanging out on a chord for an extended period of time, even as short of a period of time as that was, you can do that. You can pivot between the 1 chord and the 4 chord. You can go back and forth. It's just something that kind of fills the space in a very creative way. Now we're going to go to the E chord. Watch this. Now it starts off exactly the same. That's exactly the same. That's kind of Green Acres, right? It's kind of got that Green Acres vibe. And then we're going to go 4-2 on the 5th string. And then we're going to come down with our middle finger, this time to the 6th string though, on the 3rd fret. Pull it up a little bit, just a little sharp, and then down to that E note. That's just like a little transition note there. You can also think of that note as being in the E minor pentatonic scale. Right? So it kind of, doing that sort of pulls you into that minor vibe. So you have a, and then we play our E chord. Now we're going to hang out on the E chord for a little bit of time, and I'm going to play back to the E chord. Now let me explain what this is. First of all, we're going to slide up to the 6th fret on the 4th string, and then index finger on the 4th fret 3rd string. So you have, and I did that twice. Slide back to the 4th fret, and then back to the 2nd fret on the 4th string. Now this is really coming out of your E chord up here. Think of the E chord using the C shape out of Cage. It would look like that, right? Well, these two notes are in that chord. That's how I think of it. And so when I'm picturing, when I'm playing a lead like this and I'm hanging out on a chord for a little bit of time, all these E chord voicings start to light up. So I picture one up here, all these little triads, right? There it is using the D shape. Here's your C shape. So anyway, what that means is I can go into any of those and just play 2 notes out of any of those. So I could go, right? That's a fill lick, and it's really just based on the chord shape. So this one that I'm playing here is coming out of that C chord shape. Hopefully you get that, right? So, and then I think I threw in my pinky there on that 3rd fret 2nd string to make it an E7. And then we go back to the A chord. It's exactly the same lick, really, as the starting lick, except it starts up here. I slide up to the, it's really just a note in the chord, but it's the 3rd string on the 2nd fret. And then we go back down, 4-2, and then the little cowboy lick, and then back to the chord. So, let's take it from the beginning and play it up to that point. Okay, so at this point, the song just repeats itself. So we go back to the A chord. And what I played there, started, but this time I'm going to do a little bend here on the 4th fret 3rd string. So it's a bend release. And oh, play the note without the bend. That's 4th fret 3rd string.
Yeah, definitely good stuff, man. Like he says, it repeats, but it's the idea is, you know, being able to play little bits of chords and little pieces of phrases and putting them together, and just the way that he puts them together and uses them in those particular chord shapes, which are, you know, the movable, the most common, let's say, most common movable chord shapes with the E and the A there to get started with, and that D as well.
Oh, and
So
I
very good
recognize
stuff.
that riff. Like,
Yep.
that is one I wanted to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that he's doing that, that is right in that little major pentatonic box. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
sharp, E, F sharp. Or the B would be on the way down.
Yeah, and then he shifts over to the E.
Probably, yeah. From the A, you can shift to the E, would be going to the 5 chord essentially. So it feels, if it was A major going to the E, going to the E feels like the 5. And then if you were going to the D, that would feel like the 4. So sometimes you would go from the A to the D instead. But in either case, on the guitar, doing those little bits of chords, or doing those like, if you're hitting the 5th fret and then 2 strings on the 7th fret, for example, or 3 strings on the 7th fret, you're doing like little bar chord shapes like that. That would be the A chord, the movable A that he was talking about, and getting those little phrases in with that. Like if you go back and watch what we just looked at with that there, it definitely all starts to come through a little bit better when you start working with it. And again, not everybody's a guitarist, so I don't want to spend too much time focusing on guitar tab.
Well,
but the idea,
I like the way he presented it.
Yeah.
Was he mixing tab with staff? Because
it looks like it. Yep.
I saw the staff, but I also
it's more
like tab notation.
It's more that you saw tails, and that's the combination is where I'll put it back up here for a second. The one that he has on screen, even right here. You'll see the notes, but you'll see on the bottom which ones are connected as triplets, or connected together as phrases, or the ones, if they're a really short chord, you'll see that little extra flag on it showing that it's just a little chord stab, and then the rest.
That's cool the way he's representing
It gets
it like that.
Yeah, it allows you to get the timing in, because that's the one thing that a lot of people complain about tablature, is that if you're just looking at those numbers, like the one thing I like is in the beginning there, it does show you that bend. So taking that 4, from the 4, he's bending up a half step and then dropping it down to the 2. So that's one to, as far as the tablature notation, seeing how that works. And then on the far right, you see what chords look like, where it's, multiple numbers on the same lines. That's going from this chord to this chord, that sort of a thing. When you see a 0, that's an open string. So going from like an open to 3 2s, for example, you'll see that in a spot there. That's that A chord shape. Going from just the root to then a little inverted triad, where it's going the 5, the root, and the 3rd. Or the 5, the 3rd, and the root. 5, root, and 3rd. So basically it's getting the feel of the chord, but it's doing it as a broken chord, essentially, the root and then the other 3. So if that was a opus, that'd be an A. So it'd be like an A major chord, doing it like that, but then it would be like where you're just doing like a root and then the upper part of it. But with a guitar, the notes are usually spread out even more than that, where you're getting like, you're covering usually 2 octaves of stuff in one chord, a lot of times. But in these cases, a lot of times he was doing little dyads where he's only doing 2 notes. So he's doing like a root and a 5, for example. If you're doing the A chord, just doing an A and an E. Or you could do a root and a 3rd. But keeping it between the root and the 3rd. Yep. It's like a root and a 5 and a root and a 3rd. So you would just kind of always bouncing on the root, and either including a 5 or a 3. I'm using 2 hands also, so that's kind of cheating. Using the one hand to just bounce one note.
I like something I always had a problem with traditional staff was, the slides and the holds like that.
Yep.
Actually makes more sense seeing it this way.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I see how he pulled back a half step on that last note.
Yep. And actually on this one, I just backed it up a little bit. With this one, you can see the second and third note. You see that they're tied, the 3 and the 4. So that's how you know that that's like tied together, and it's got an H on the top, so that's a hammer-on. The same thing with that.
That's the hammer-on.
That's a hammer-on. Yep.
That's what I was looking for.
Yep.
Because the hammer-on was a key to the melody he was talking about.
Yep. And then you also see that it's part of a triplet here. So that's where the timing, with that little tie at the bottom, it's showing you that you're hammering on from the 3 to the 4 on that string, and then hitting the 2 on that next string, and that's a phrase. So like doodle-det is a phrase. Like those 3 notes are together, and then here you're doing a hammer-on where it's like a grace note where you're going like just a little tiny grace note into that one that's tied with the next one.
Yeah, what the hell's that 3 doing? Just like to the moon.
Yep, that's a bend. And then at the very top, it'll either say one
is a
or a
bend.
half or 1.5. Like that's a bend telling you you're bending it up. It's probably a half step that he was going, because that was the one he was saying on that low G, taking that G and going from he's basically going from a G to an E at the end, right? So he's going from the G, he's going to bend it up a little bit. It's hard to do with the button, but it's like, and you're not doing a full bend, you're just doing, it's almost like pulling it just a little bit sharp. So it might even be a quarter bend. It's only a partial bend, but that's what a bend looks like. And then you'll see a tie at the end of the bar there also, where it's tying from the one chord to the next one, which might also have a hammer on.
Well, and a bend is different than just moving a note a half step, or a
And
whole
different than a
step.
slide. Yep.
Yeah, and different than a slide. That would make for a good discussion one night. Like
Yeah.
the difference between a bend and a slide.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just that one starts with B.
Yeah.
Just trying to see what else we missed in the hammer-ons were good to see though. Like with the little H at the top, you saw one that was a grace note. You saw another one that was just 2 regular notes. So the timing on those is different. Where when you see the little tiny note, like in this case, we have that first one. The third note there, the first hammer-on, is like a grace note. So that's going, but and you're just barely hitting that first note when you hit the second. But then you see the next hammer-on next to it with the 3 to the 4 is actually 2 individual notes. So you're going 3 and then hammering on the 4, each as a full note, taking their own full time. Where that first one was just a grace note, but up. So it's good to see the difference in those two.
I know this is for a guitar, but it is actually useful to see.
Oh, yeah.
As a keyboardist, it makes more sense to me than some of the traditional notation I typically look at.
And they also give you a little cheat up here with the A, telling you that now we're moving, that if you were just looking at the chords, like there'd be a chord stamp for guitar usually right there showing you what A chord that you're using. But it's basically that 0222 is the A chord shape, and he just broke it up with a root, and then the 0, and then the 222, and then a little rest, and then a 0 and something else. Just breaking the chords up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to see the notation.
ActiveMelody.com.
ActiveMelody.com. Yep, absolutely.
Bookmark.
And Active Melody. Yep, I got them subscribed to the channel there, and that's the YouTube channel as well. Active Melody. Another useful one to have in the collection of links and people that we've shown and worked with on the channel before.
Yeah,
Definitely some good stuff.
We have Guitar Night. We will go back to that.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where we have tons of stuff that we can go over on a Guitar Night, and the question is whether we want to do it with, with a bunch of resources, watching a lot of videos, or if we want to do it more just having the guitars in hand and working with it from there, or a combination of both.
I would love all you guitarists out there, and I know you're out there.
They're out there, all right.
All you guitarists on here, it will be part gear horse and a lot of guitar.
And it doesn't even have to all be live either. You could send us like a short video of you showing off doing something with your guitar or your stuff. Like if you show off your gear, show off what you can do with it, send in a short clip or whatever. Showing a little demonstration of how you're using the equipment.
Pop it in a video, send us a link.
Mm-hmm.
Ange, me, Glenn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we
we'll
will
get you
take a
out
look. Yeah. Because that way we could make a compilation also. If we get a bunch of those together and then put them all together. I'd like that. Because each of us could also do a couple of those kinds of things, whether it's the guitar stuff, whether it's the bass stuff, whether it's in the studio, or whether it's here at home, or whether it's out at a gig somewhere. I have a bunch of photo and video of a bunch of the gigs that I go to a lot, where I have I'm usually with the band or in with the band or the sound crew, so I'm like right up there with them and get shots from there, or I have good vantage points for my cameras to take recordings from.
Oh, and you get to hang out with some really cool guitarists. And some of those bands, some of those guitarists are, never mind just Jeff Beck. Let's bring him on.
Yeah, definitely. You'll come on.
He's the Jeff Beck that's still alive, and he's still rocking.
That's right. And we'll get him in there. He's over by Ange.
Yeah.
We can get him. We can get him when we need him. We can get him on in here. He would probably do keyboard mostly, but he would be happy to go over guitar too. I mean, he's taught guitar, he's taught keyboard. I mean, I've seen him do it all, and I've learned from him on everything. So I mean, it's all out there. It's all in there. It's all fair game.
Let's take a moment for Burt Bacharach.
Okay.
Lost him today. Great.
Oh, man.
Very important to music. Give him a musical shout out.
Mm-hmm.
gonna have to throw one of his tunes into my library the next couple of days.
Definitely. That would be worthwhile. We did that with was it Jeff Beck when we lost him recently? We were doing some freeway jam. So we had a rehearsal that day, and like as I walked in, Joey was working on one of the songs. I was like, oh yeah, we'll do that one. Definitely some good ones in that mix.
Yeah, I was gonna try to do his version of Superstitious.
Ooh, nice.
Not easy.
Yeah. See, now for that, to me, that's the let's see. We figured is that clav more or percussive organ? Like, what do you think would cover that?
If you're doing the like Stevie Wonder version of clav, yeah.
It would have to be, I guess. So I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that the clav on here is right for it, but I guess it also might just depend on what octave I'm in. The bandoneon, no. But the clav, perhaps. There he is. Yeah, there you go. Somewhere around there.
What are you starting with?
I was going with E octaves. Yep, and then E, D, E. And then I was going A, B flat, B, and then a D. I'm going A, B flat, B. And then B, D, E. Think of it as 3 different phrases. The first one is just that E, E, D, E. And then you got the A, B flat, B.
Oh,
Yep.
wow, that A, B flat, B. That's a little unusual.
That's a little funky. And then the D. So, yep. Yep. B, D, E.
Yeah, see, that's not traditional. That A, B
That's the
flat,
secret
B.
sauce. That's the secret sauce.
That's some spicy meatballs.
Don't tell anybody. It's secret. But yeah, you start getting the feel of that timing, and then for me, I have to use 2 hands for that. Like you can do it with one, but I guess if I did, I would be doing like thumb, index, thumb for that A, B flat, B. Like the thumb is hitting the A and the B, and the index finger is hitting the B flat. So getting used to that little bounce where you're doing thumb, doing thumb and then index.
Oh,
and then
you're
thumb.
doing it with your right hand.
Well, that's my left hand, actually. But I cross over at weird times, so it's like it's whatever's comfortable or whatever works for you. So like, don't be locked into you have to use this finger or that finger for certain things, but be more open to just being able to do stuff where it makes the most sense.
Oh, and it feels better on my right hand doing that.
Sure.
Then my left hand's like, oh my God, you want me to hit an A to B flat to B?
And for me, I have big hands, so from me trying to do that also feels like if I tried to do that with the thumb, index, and middle finger, like they're all in each other's way. Like trying to hit that with those 3 fingers, like it's all crunched together and weird. But if I just use the thumb and I bounced it like using the thumb on the A and the B and the index on the B flat, and that way I'm going thumb, index, thumb, index. Yeah.
Charge! It almost is like charge. Just a funky version.
And that's where throwing those in there is basically thinking of it as E minor pentatonic, right? You got the root, the third, the 4, that's the tritone. So that's the blue note and the 5. So you're doing, it's all E minor pentatonic is what the whole song is, and the only note we're really adding in is that B flat, which is the tritone. So I'm just kind of messing around like that.
Feeling up a song.
Yep. Always a good idea. And that's again the main thing is like I'm used to playing that on the bass or on the guitar, where it's a totally different feel, but it's the same idea, same notes.
Oh, that.
I'm not sure how the volume is though.
That kind of bounce was made for a bass guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I tuned up the guitar. I don't have, or I do have the bass there too. But let me see how's the volume here. Oh, actually,
Good.
I cut out even. Can you? Actually, I don't hear it. But just doing the same.
Quiet, but
And for in that case, if it was doing it in E, it would just be open strings. So like the open E, and then the octave.
and that roll between the A to the B flat to the B, so much easier there.
Yeah, and that, it is on the guitar also because you're doing open first fret and second fret here.
Yeah,
Kind of like hammering those.
the guitar was made to do that.
And even the hammer on for the D and the E is open and second fret. Yes, those are both open strings also. The open B and the open G. Just like that. But yeah, I think I got I can get the bass tuned up in a bit. But we were talking guitar, so I figured I'd go with the guitar. Just a wee bit. But I did like that
Guitar
active
night
melody.
is coming.
It is. We're doing little bits here and there, but that we can do an entire guitar night at any time. One night we're going to do one where we probably whether we change the strings or we're going to talk about intonation. Like maybe we'll kind of see, like, go over like how exactly you can check the intonation using a tuner and checking with your ear where you're hearing the open string and at the 12th fret should sound the same when you're fretting it and when you have the harmonic, and when you get all those and you got a precise enough tuner, you can really get your guitar dialed in or your bass dialed in to where everything is really where it should be and sounds great, no matter where you're playing on the neck. Because sometimes you'll be fine when you tune it open, but then you go to play higher and higher on the neck and things are more and more out of whack the higher you get, and that's usually just an intonation issue that is pretty easily fixable on most instruments, most electric guitars.
And
Or
tuning
basses.
talk is another one that,
Yep.
like, how do you guys out there tune? Do you use the pedal tuners? Do you tune by ear?
Do you always go standard 440 or do you go 432?
Well, yeah, oh yeah, that's a big one. Any of you out there who are tuning 432, contact me. I've
Oh yeah.
been
I know.
hardcore 432 the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know several people who do. Like, they send me the tracks, and like I'm tuned in 440 just because that's what we usually play to at the studio spaces, and that's what the keyboards at the studio spaces are tuned to, and that's what this keyboard is
Yeah.
tuned to.
Yeah. If
So
it was
in those
up to
cases-
me, I would do everything. I would do most of my things in 432. I tend to like listen to the song in both tunings and see where it works best. But I do like the 432 tuning. My ears go there.
They like it.
Yeah.
It is delicious.
And
432.
sometimes it has to do with the instruments that are part of the song. Like I like it for traditional acoustic instruments.
Yeah, and I've seen
Acoustic
some
guitars
studies.
and things like that sounds so much better.
I've seen some studies that were looking at whether it's harmonics or even like, have you ever seen where they take a plate and then they put like sand or whatever on the plate and then they turn on vibrations at certain frequencies and you'll see the sand like change into these really crazy patterns, like it looks like somebody did a spirograph on there. and then they change to another frequency, and all the sand will just move and shift to a whole different position. It's very cool. I'll find that video because that's the kind of thing that it's really interesting to see. And when you do look at that and you're sweeping through frequencies, you do find that 432 tuning frequencies react differently than 440 frequencies do, and that's one of those things that they talk about in the differences in tunings.
What is that liquid that kind of dances to sound waves?
Sure. Some of it is it's a kind of a magnetic fluid, so they might call it ferromagnetic fluid, where it's basically, think of it as like slime, so it's got some consistency to it, but with magnetic
like
properties to
blob,
it. Yeah.
But it bounces like a subwoofer almost, and it shapes itself based off of that's another one. We'll
And I want to say that video was
some research, and we'll take a look at that one.
I want to take a guess. I'm gonna take a guess and say that cornstarch and water was part of that one, or one of them that I had seen was cornstarch and water was the main components of what made it go.
Yes,
I don't know, like that part's not magnetic, but that would have been reacting to the vibrations, I think, at that point. But yeah, we'll definitely look at some of those acoustic vibration videos, because those are definitely cool. And just again, the patterns in the couple of plate, I think they call them resonant plate experiments, and these they're actually physics experiments for vibrations and acoustics, but they also have that wow factor. So they're also undoubtedly been seen on YouTube as well.
Yeah, my buddy Jason did it just to make like a visualizer for his room.
Nice. Yeah. And that's the way to do it. And that's what I do love. I mean, I love fractals and things like that, anything that reacts to sound in different ways, because that's another good, another cool thing that we have at our disposal. Like we had at one point the spectralizers that we could put on. So like whether it's the bottom one there, like it doesn't react to me though, because it doesn't hear my sound. But if Tony talks, you see it in the blue spectralizer at the bottom.
Spectralizer, I'm blue.
And then there's also the yellow one in the middle. That one doesn't read me either, but it reads you.
Hey Glenn, look at you. You're in the sun.
I'm a dandelion.
Well, you are dandy.
And that's the spectralizers. But yeah, I don't usually keep those on because again, they don't hear me. So I would have to, if I rerouted things a little bit, then they would react to me. But as it is, they would react to whatever I'm watching, or if I'm watching a video, I could have those react as well.
Yeah, it's all about how you feed the audio in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with OBS, like audio routing in OBS is even trickier than audio routing in your DAW.
Yeah. I turned into pretty colors.
No, I'm tripping.
Look at all the pretty colors. Is that other camera's out? Like that would be that other corner there, but without it, nope. We can have the four AI art and the one camera, or the big camera. But the one that's missing is the one that's not there. Yeah, we'll stick with what we had. And ridiculous if we're gonna do some keys, but it was the clav, because that's what we were talking about. Little Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually because I didn't appreciate the clav until I started doing some Stevie Wonder tracks, and I was like, oh, that's how they got that 70s funk kind of sound.
Now, sometimes some do it on the electric piano.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same bite, though. Like, you know, the clav has a bite to it.
Electric piano 2 is a little bit sharper. Honky tonk. The honky tonk piano. Never really was a fan of the bright piano.
In 2023, I'm going to get my honky tonk on.
Nice. We'll definitely look at some stuff. I was saying, what did I tell you? The ragtime.
Yeah.
Maple leaf rag. That's what we were talking about. That was one for timing, for syncopation. That one I have to look at it again. But
Yeah,
the
it's not
timing on
enough
it is
just
the,
to have the sound when it comes to honky tonk. The
Yeah, no.
sound is half the journey.
Mhm.
The left right kind of attack
Yeah.
is the part that been studying for like 25, 30 years trying to get that groove between my
Mhm.
left and right hand.
Yep. And that's where, again, sometimes it has to do with what we're, if it's hard to work with two hands together, that's where a looper or being able to record a small phrase into something is helpful, because if you have a part of the song where it's just a repetitive phrase in the left hand, you can get that going, even if you're using your right hand to do it. Get it locked in on the phrase sampler and then play over it with the other hand. And then once you get used to doing the parts individually, trying to merge them together at a slower speed and then bringing the speed back up is usually the way I would approach it.
Exactly, like you always suggest. Start slow, get it at the slow pace first, and work the speed in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because it takes time, and it also depends. Like if you're able to do it at a slow speed very easily, then just ramping up the speeds no problem. You start going faster until you start stumbling, and then you want to work on it at that speed or slower, get it to where it's clean, figure out what the problem is. If your fingering is wacky or whatever, sometimes you just have to adjust. You shouldn't think of any rules as hard, fast rules, and that's one of the things where I've opened myself up a lot on the keys by just allowing myself to play with either hand or both hands. And if I'm pecking at them like I was, it's like I was learning to type and like hitting, one key with each hand like that, fine. Just whatever I'm able to do to get the sound to come out. Like even doing that little phrase, like doing that, I'm actually doing left hand index middle finger and index for the A and the B flat, and then index and middle for the B and the D in the right hand. So I'm using both hands. And able to just kind of roll those four notes real fast like that. So, I mean, normally if I were trying to do it with one hand, it's a little bit more crowded because my hand's too big to like really fit in there comfortably. But by dividing it up into a two-hand thing, it makes it easier. And understanding where those pentatonic notes are is super important, because once you do feel where you are in that pentatonic scale, you could literally go all up and down the entire keyboard with that little thing that we were just doing there. If we just leave out that B flat even, and just using the E, the G, the A, the B, and the D, using those guys, and just going anywhere you want. And then if you wanted to throw in that B flat.
And it's funny, you think your big hands. I always thought like I had fat fingers and they got in the way of like me playing clean and accidentally hitting other notes. Your hands are like twice as big as mine, yet somehow you fluidly move through.
You can play that. Playing a C to an E is comfortable. If I try to go beyond that to the F, it's kind of just barely. And C to a G, I can like hit the C and hit the G and kind of hold them both down with one hand, but I can't comfortably play that far.
Well, big fingers help with the stretch, but when you're hitting the individual notes, and like I always felt like my fingers are short and stubby. Like I do accidentally hit notes next to the note I'm trying to hit sometimes.
Which is not always a bad thing. Like I was saying, sometimes I've seen Jeff, do like a smush thing where he hits like 3-4 notes on the way to where he's going.
Yeah,
for effect.
If you get used to it enough, it is the honky tonk sound. It is the like slide pull kind of technique that like you can utilize as a keyboard player if you can get comfortable with it.
Similarly to using the whammy bar on a guitar or using the bend wheel on a keyboard. Like if you are playing a solo, being comfortable enough to be able to throw that bend wheel in a few times in your solo, that's where the pentatonic comes in big, because in the pentatonic that you're doing, there are 3 spots that you can always do a whole step bend, no problem. Because if you were doing that same key we were just doing it in, where E minor pentatonic, you can bend up the G to the A, you can bend up the A to the B, and you can bend up the D to the E.
And all of them are whole step bends.
Yep.
Yep.
And they all sound perfect. So, I mean, and you can do all of those anytime, but you also want to get comfortable with when to mix those in.
Those are the secret locations for bending on that particular pentatonic scale.
That's right. Yep. Bending the 3 to the 4, the 4 to the 5, and the 7 to the 1 in minor pentatonic.
I had an epiphany.
Nice. And in the major pentatonic, it's the same notes, same idea, but if we were playing G major pentatonic, same notes, and we're bending from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, and the 5 to the 6. because in the major pentatonic you're doing 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So you're doing 1 to the 2, 2 to the 3, 5 to the 6.
See, these are the patterns that I need to start recognizing.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's again where once that kind of clicks just like that, that's one of those things where now anytime you're playing in a pentatonic position, you know that you can throw those bends in. And if it's easy to overuse it. Don't get me wrong. Like anytime you're using spice, it's easy to throw in too much chili powder. You want to use just a little here and there, but knowing when and where to use it. And you throw that in, and you catch somebody's ear who was like, yeah, another solo. Wait, what? Like,
Well,
oh.
and like you said, like the spice in music, whether it's an effect like the vocator, and you use it a little bit, can really accent a part. You use it through the whole damn song, and it can destroy a part.
Yep. Same thing with whether it's delay. Like sometimes you know how in certain songs they'll be like the vocal has a nice amount of reverb on it, everything's cool, and then like at one part there's like one line where they put like a massive delay on it. So it's like wow.
Well, and where is that usually? It's usually like in a bridge right before a chorus, or right at the end of the chorus before it goes back into a verse.
But it's not everywhere.
Yeah. If you use that delay through the whole thing, it loses its impact.
Yeah, your mind goes nuts with it. Yeah.
And the moment it's supposed to have that effect, no longer has it, because like, oh well, the delay's been there the whole time.
Yep. It's like crying Chicken Little. The sky is falling. You said it too many times, and now when it's actually falling up, nobody's going to listen to you. But yeah, that's one of those things. Those are the secret spots. But yeah, and that's the other thing, is recognizing that those are the same places, right? Like the 1, 3, 5, or 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, minor pentatonic, knowing that you're bending the 3 to the 4, 4 to the 5, 7 to the 8, or 7 to the 1. And then if it was major pentatonic, same notes, same bends, same places, but it's considered the 1 to the 2, the 2 to the 3, and the 5 to the 6. Big bend.
I'm trying to bend like Glenn.
Yeah,
I
you want
don't
to do
bend
whole,
like Beckham. I bend like Glenn.
and that was like an octave bend. It sounded like.
Yeah. This clap sound is like going an octave.
Yeah.
On the pitch wheel.
And that means you just gotta nudge that pitch wheel just a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta do about halfway.
It still sounds like it's going boing,
Yeah.
boing, disappearing.
That's more like a bitch wheel.
That's the bright piano. A little too bright. But the grand is always nice.
Yeah, when it comes to the pianos on my keyboards, the brights and the darks, I don't tend to actually use those patches a lot. If I want the effect that they tend to do, I will do that in an effect to a nice clean piano. But I don't like that effect being part of the sound. It's like recording a wet piano track.
Yeah.
A dark
Dry,
grand,
simple track. Yeah.
A dark grand is kind of muddy. Like if I want to adjust that mud, I don't want it to be in the track. I'd rather add it to the track.
Yep. Start with clean, because we can always add to the clean, and it's not always easy to take the dirt off or the wet off of the clean.
Yeah.
So if you have it recorded with the effect on there, there's only so much you can do to clean it up or add a different effect without muddying it all up together.
Yeah, and the nice thing with any modern keyboard, General MIDI has 3 piano sounds. 0, 1, and 2 are piano 1, 2, and 3. And they give you basic piano foundations that you can add effects to and turn it into a honky-tonk. Although there is actually a honky-tonk in General MIDI too.
Yeah.
But
There's a couple that they give you as presets because they figure a lot of people want that preset, and like that clav sound. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, electric piano, clav. I mean, there's certain ones that are just super important to have.
There's 2 clavs and a harpsichord.
Mm-hmm. Always good. And the blown whistle or blown bottle. Like,
Yeah.
is that one of them as well?
There's a bottle and there is a whistle. The whistle tends to suck in general. Maybe.
Yeah, whistle's tough.
Well, and you're born with a whistle. So if I really wanted a whistle in one of my songs, I can't sing, but I can fucking whistle
There you go.
like a champ.
This is actually not bad. It sounds almost ocarina, maybe, or flute.
Yeah, the ocarina actually sounds better than the flute in mine.
And this is the ocarina right next to it. A little bit electronic sounding compared to the whistle. And then square wave.
That's the foundation of synthesizers.
The black note square wave shuffle.
For Shinji's synth contest,
Mhm.
that's what I want to do with my track. I want
Nice.
to incorporate a sign, a square, a triangle, and what's the other one?
Saw?
Saw.
That-
Oh
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Actually,
triangle.
the majority of the piece that I'm working on is saw. Saw is my favorite. Saw is the one that feels like brass, feels like a distorted guitar. Saw covers so many moods.
And so much of it depends on intensity, too. Like, just hitting it real light, it does have just kind of like a synthy sound or whatever, but if you hit it, you can get like laser.
And if you get it with the right kind of release,
Mm-hmm.
my favorite on this keyboard reminds me of my original, my Casio that I got, my first keyboard.
Yep.
I would have kept that just for one sound, and it sounded pretty much just like this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a saw stack, but it's
Nice.
it's a little ditty in F minor.
Yeah, F minor pentatonic.
Yeah, yes, I fuck with the timing big time in this one.
Yeah, I like it.
But that's how you give a song, your own flavor. Like if
Mhm.
you can't really find a new progression or a new chord because like
Right.
every
Just a
chord
new
and
way of-
progression has been done.
But a new way of doing
timing
things.
is the one thing you get to make your own.
It is one of the best ways to be expressive. Timing and dynamics also. I mean, some people, they do have just a very much of a 100%, like out of the gate, bam, bam, bam. Sometimes it's just a style of music thing where some styles of music are louder than others and some are much more laid back. But
And which part? Like
Yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah.
that's why I love doing these remasters and studying like what makes the song, because the bass parts, the keyboard parts, the guitar parts, the drum parts, the melody parts, strings and brasses. When you are learning from each one of those different instruments' approach, timing changes, attack changes.
Yep.
I could have never understood brass the way I do now if unless I learned it as a kid, which that they weren't my instruments.
And like I said, I did do trumpet for like just a few weeks. I want to say even like I tried trumpet. I think it was 4th grade, but
That's the one I wish that I had an opportunity in 4th, 5th grade. They were like, pick an instrument. And I wanted to do violin. My parents were like, fuck that. We just spent all this on baseball. I'm spending $400 on a violin.
pretty sure my sister did violin, and I did trumpet at that point. But in both cases, like we were both, it was short lived. Let's just say.
Yeah.
Trumpet, or I should say, piano was something that we both did more for more years when we were younger. But I think we both kind of like got out of it around the same time. Like
Well,
she was
piano,
3 years older, but
I would imagine piano would have been like a natural for you guys. Anytime you got an adult in a house that does a piano that doesn't sit doing nothing in a house tends to influence little ones. Even if nobody's playing it, a little one will come and start banging on it just because it makes noise.
Yep. And at one point, I mean, we did have a Steinway at the house there, and it was like you can't leave that sitting there not getting
Are
played.
you kidding? That's blasphemy.
Yeah, it would not be right. So yeah, had to do it. But even with even with this Casio that I have here now, even with the keys, clicking a little bit, like when you go to play them, I'm going to be playing it through the headphones anyway. Once I getting it playing through MIDI, which I have it doing, it's just got that little bit of latency, so it's a little bit annoying if I'm playing something fast. But I can see my way past that and just use it as a weighted 88 key MIDI controller when I need to. So use it to get parts into songs when I want that weighted key feel. But I mean, I really do like the speed that I get with this little this Casio 61 key over here. It's pretty nice, and it's got a pretty good touch response too.
Yeah, and Casio's always been on the up and up when it comes to their samples and their sounds. They were my first keyboard. I've always had one around.
That Casio CZ1 that I was telling you about, that first keyboard that I had, the big, where you could do everything with it. I also had the SK1, which was the super tiny chiclet key one that had the recorder in it. So you go, hello, hello, hello. Like it had the little sampler in it. So I was playing with that back, my early teens.
Yeah, when they incorporated sampling into their keyboards, they really did take off. The CZ was so awesome, though.
Yeah, I love that.
I had the CZ 5000. It was the biggest CZ they had, and it was the only time my parents, like, I couldn't get the violin. I wasn't going to go to any other sports. They actually, like, put in, it was like $1,200 for that CZ 5000 at the time.
Yeah.
It was the best gift that they could have ever given.
Because I got that CZ1 with a PV amp, and it was like, a big fat PV amp with 3 inputs on the front there, so you could get a whole band, going in through one thing if you needed to, which was my thinking at the time. But it was, it's not really the way you do it. You have a guitar player, he's got his own guitar amp. You have a bass player, he's got his own bass amp. You don't need everybody plugging into the keyboard player's amp. But the idea was that it was definitely, that keyboard with an amp like that was definitely solid. Like I could have played out, no problems if I had, skill in a band. I would have done it. But at the time, I was just kind of playing, classical music and just trying to figure out, and I never really learned how to make music on keyboard until just these last couple of years. A very recent development.
Oh shit, man! You're already beyond me on keyboards.
Well, it's one of those things where the guitar and bass stuff that I did for all those years really did bleed over into the others, and understanding, I think it's one of those things about, they talk about like windows of opportunity. Like when I was very little, I did, have the exposure to piano and playing piano. And even if I didn't get that good at piano then, I did kind of open the window to, how piano works and how to be able to relearn some of those things, like riding a bike, something that's going to come back to me. And I didn't really do guitar or bass when I was a kid. I did borrow a bass once for like a month and learned like the one Whitesnake song. Here we go again. But it's like that's all I knew how to play, and it was like a brief moment in time where I just figured that out, and then never really went back to stringed instruments for a decade or whatever. Got that one guitar, and that guitar held me over for a long time, just learning like a couple of Pink Floyd songs, and any kind of 1-4-5 song, like I could figure that out, like Foxy Lady, figured that one out, that kind of stuff. But only knew a few songs and never really went on with the learning and figuring out music theory. Because even with piano back then, I learned scales and things like that, but I didn't learn how things connected. It was more learn how to play the scale of F sharp major on the piano, learn how to play the scale D sharp major on the piano, whatever. Like just going through all of the scales, and it seemed like an endless list of scales that we were going to have to do. Because once you get done with all the major and minor scales, then you can go start getting into harmonic minor, and there's all kinds of other things you can do, which are good to know. But for the majority of what you're going to be playing, if you were to start people off and just say, here's how you play a pentatonic scale, here's how you find the root note, whether it's major or minor, and here's how you make a pentatonic scale out of it, it would be so much easier to try to learn stuff by ear, because you know how songs go. You find, you go, what is that the first note of? And you figure, that's A minor. Okay, that's this song.
And there's a difference between whether you're seeking that information or it's being thrust on you.
Exactly.
Because, some of my music teachers used to cringe because they're like, you need to know this, and they saw potential and tried to say, like, you need to know all this stuff so you know all your options. Now, after, like, 30 years of studying it, I understand what they were trying to tell me. But at the time, the things that I picked up were, like, the things that I felt like I was using. And, or the few scales and things that I did seek. Like, I want to sound this way. Well, what is that song? And learning that.
Yep. Knowing what a flat two. And that's where doing explorations now, like just looking at the keyboard, saying, okay, if we're playing in C major or A minor, we're using all the white notes, right? So it's like, okay, there's only 5 notes that we're not using. And it's just getting comfortable with how do those sound. Like if we're playing in C major, what does a D flat sound like? It doesn't sound good at all. It sounds really bad. But it's an option. When you're in the key of C, if you want to do something that sounds really out there, you can throw in that D flat.
If that is your particular goal, is to get that out there kind of sound, which, a composer doing something, say, for a movie or a score where the music's meant to speak that way, this is when you try those notes. Yes, can you imagine what Josh would be like if it was in major?
And that's just the thing, is like, just taking like, and how each note sounds against that. So that major, and then there's the minor third. Doesn't sound right either. I mean, that's the flat 3. And then what about the tritone? Sounds discordant, but it doesn't sound as bad as it did before, because those other ones sounded worse.
To be a tone.
And then that's the flat 6. And then the flat 7. That one should sound better, because that's technically a dominant chord.
Well,
Major third,
it's
minor
about
second.
the distance between where the clash is happening.
Yeah, because if you put the clash right in the middle, like that D flat, if they're right,
The closer it gets,
it's ugly.
I just got kicked in the musical nuts.
But those are the only ones that are the wrong, quote-unquote, notes if you're playing in C major. So once you get a feel for how those are, you know where you are.
If you don't necessarily hit them together, but you hit them in a rhythmic way, you can do some real interesting things there by hitting the wrong note, then hitting the right note, then hitting the wrong note. And if you do it rhythmically, Igor Stravinsky.
Yep, and that was a Victor Wooten thing.
Magorsky. Like, these are the composers who learn to hit very dissonant notes next to each other, off of each other.
Yep, and Victor Wooten was talking about it when if you do hit a note that's a wrong note, understand that there's definitely a right note on both sides of it. So if that's the wrong note, those are both in. So like you were saying, go from that wrong note to a right note and then play it again.
And a lot of times,
And now you just made it into a part, so it's
when
not that it's a
these
wrong note.
composers
It just
would
sounds
do
that way.
The composers would do that with the attitude that they were gonna slide the scale up. So they'd be hitting those wrong notes next to those right notes, and then next thing you know, you chromatically are going up a half step, and then another half step, and then another half step, and they're like, wait a minute, now I'm in a totally different key.
Which is way worse for a keyboard player than it is for guitar. Because again, guitar, you just keep sliding up a half fret, slide up another fret and do the same phrase, same pattern, just one fret higher. Whereas on the keyboard, it fucks everything up.
That's the kind of stuff that makes me jealous of how easy the stringed instruments can do it.
Yep. It's one of those things. I mean, each have their advantages, but that is one of the ones that I do like about the guitar is the claws. Like we call them for the different chord shapes. Like again, the video we watched earlier for that E chord shape, the A chord shape, and the D chord shape. You get those in there, and that's going back to the caged system where those are 3 of the 5. If you get those 5, C, A, G, E, and D, you get those 5 shapes under your hands, and you kind of get the understanding that okay, the E chord shape and the G chord shape, those are both rooted on the big fat 6 string, and uses all 6 strings usually. And then the A and the C are both rooted on the 5th string. So those are, 5 string chords. And then that D is only using the 4 strings, the skinniest 4 strings. So once you kind of get comfortable with that.
When you do things every half step, what is they call that chromatic? Is that
Chromatic, yep.
where chromatic comes from? Is the
A
whole
chromatic
half
run
step?
usually, yeah. And that's also where, like we were talking before about I'm just using these 3. I'm using the thumb, index, and middle. And so, like, starting from the C, I would be going thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, index, middle on that F sharp, the first place that the middle finger would show up. And then back to the thumb, index, and then the middle finger shows up again for the C sharp.
Well,
So it's only there and there.
We'll have to revisit that one night as a topic because the Worms project we did last year.
Yep.
The whole strategy behind that. I was going through this phase where it's like, okay, I need to get comfortable with every half step across this keyboard.
Nice.
And where it's useful in writing, and it can be.
Oh, yeah. And again, if it is going to be just a fast phrase, it's about the fingering to be able to, try to get it smoother because it depends on how far you're going.
And you're typically going to use it more for that, that kind of motion effect. But even when you're just doing, you create this kind of chaos.
Unsettled. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm spinning. That will be a good discussion that night on the moods that you can get from using that technique.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this was a fucking. I had an epiphany. I had
Nice. I love the epiphanies.
Yeah. Oh, and I got another virtual edge.
Nice. Here we go.
She wanted to let us know.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I...
Oh, it's playing yours.
I know that guy.
I know that guy too.
Wow! What a great show, guys. You blew my virtual mind tonight. That really was highly educational. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and tune in tomorrow as Angified presents the SR Show with your host, SR. Same Ange time, same Ange channel, only on Ange TV. We'll see you then. Virtual Ange here saying goodnight.
Virtual Ange.
Oh yeah, she got French at the end.
Angelique.
Ange.
Well, good stuff. Glad we had some epiphanies. Glad we went over some good stuff here with guitar and with keys. And we'll do it more next time. We'll have a guitar night, like we said, one of these nights. But we definitely do little pieces here and there, little bits, going back and forth between vocals and guitars and stuff.
Yeah, and move that virtual Ange from there over to here, so it should work next week.
Nice. There you go. Excellent.
She ate that computer.
Yeah, she did. And she ate it early. But that's okay. But it's been a pleasure, as always, Tony.
Yes, this was fun.
And we will do it
Thank you all
again.
for joining us. We'll be
Yes,
back
indeed.
next Thursday. SR will be here tomorrow night.
Much love.
Night, everyone.
Have a good one. Little ambient noise, yeah?
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can scratch. With this AI, like scratching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I didn't
spot.
even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.